My name is Kate, and I live with my husband, Michael. We run a restaurant called Sunflower, which I inherited from my grandfather. He owned the restaurant for many years, and it was a favorite spot for the locals, even when he was battling cancer. My grandfather refused to rest. I can't just sit in a hospital, he would say. I belong in Sunflower, working until my last day. He kept cooking and serving with a smile, even as his health got worse. Sadly, one day, he passed away with our family by his side. Before he died, my grandfather left a detailed will naming me, his granddaughter, as the next owner of Sunflower. I decided to honor his wishes and continue his legacy. Thankfully, the regular customers stayed loyal, and the restaurant remained busy. The employees who worked with my grandfather also stayed on, which helped me feel confident in taking over. Since I had spent years learning his cooking style, I was able to prepare dishes that tasted just like his. Customers often said, "It feels like your grandfather is still here with us." Their support made me even more determined to succeed. But Michael wasn't happy about the arrangement. "Why should you inherit the restaurant? Shouldn't it go to me? A man should run the business," he said. I told him, "I'm the granddaughter. Besides, you're running it with me, so it doesn't matter." Michael wasn't convinced. He wanted to be the official owner, even though he couldn't cook. All he ever did was shop for ingredients, while I handled everything in the kitchen. "You can't own a restaurant if you can't even cook," I told him. I knew I was stubborn, but I wanted to respect my grandfather's wishes. He trusted me to carry on his work, and I wasn't about to let him down. Life at Sunflower was busy but fulfilling, until Michael's younger brother, Dave, showed up one day. "Hey, Michael, long time no see," Dave said as he strolled in. Dave had always been lazy and unreliable. He never kept a job for long and didn't take life seriously. Honestly, I didn't like him much. After quitting his latest job, he came back to town and decided to visit us. "So, Michael, did you inherit the restaurant?" Dave asked. "No, Kate did," Michael replied. "What, your wife? That's ridiculous. A woman running a restaurant?" Dave laughed, completely ignoring the customers glaring at him. Then he asked, "Since I'm family, can I eat for free?" "Sure," Michael said without hesitation. Dave ate a big meal, drank beer, and left without paying. I wasn't happy. Even family members pay when they eat here. It's not fair to everyone else, I told Michael. "It's fine," Michael said. "Dave doesn't have any money. We should help him out." After that, Dave started coming to Sunflower all the time, eating and drinking for free. I kept telling Michael to make him pay, but he always made excuses. The more I pushed, the more annoyed Michael got. Eventually, we stopped talking to each other. Dave kept coming around, and the distance between Michael and me grew wider. The two of them would often go into the kitchen and whisper to each other. I acted like I didn't notice and focused on cooking and taking care of our customers. One day, while sneaking glances at me, Dave whispered to Michael, "Isn't there a way for you to take over this restaurant? My wife owns it," Michael replied. "But think about it, this place is in a great location, and it's always packed with customers. Why let her keep all the control and profit? It must be tough working under her, right?" Michael hesitated. "Well, yeah, it is," he muttered. Dave, clearly wanting a piece of the business, began scheming with Michael. My husband, already annoyed with me, eventually agreed to go along with his brother's plan. The next day, our restaurant was closed for a break. Michael left the house early, and I decided to use the day to clean up the restaurant. When I arrived, I noticed the door was already open. At first, I thought I might have forgotten to lock it the night before, but when I went inside, I saw Michael and Dave standing there. "Oh, you're here," Michael said, smirking. The door was open. I was surprised. I said, "What are you doing here on a closed day?" Both of them were grinning in a way that made me uneasy. "I need to tell you something," Michael said. "Ever since you inherited this restaurant, you've been acting all high and mighty, and I'm sick of it." "I'm not acting like that," I argued. "Yes, you are," Dave said, stepping in. "You think you're so great just because the restaurant is successful and making money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were treating me like I had done something wrong by running the restaurant well. As I argued back, Michael suddenly pulled out a stack of papers and slammed them onto the table. "I've had enough of this. I can't stand your attitude anymore. Let's get a divorce," he said coldly. I looked down and saw they were already filled out divorce papers. I was completely stunned by Michael's sudden announcement. What is this all about? I asked, confused and upset. My thoughts immediately turned to the restaurant. I have employees, but running Sunflower on my own after a divorce will be hard. This is too much to take in all at once, I said, trying to make sense of it all. Michael didn't hesitate. We'll buy the restaurant from you, he said. I'll take over as the owner, and you can leave. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. It's such a waste, Dave added smugly. This place has a great location and so many customers. With your boring menu, we could do so much better. Exactly, Michael said. Sign the divorce papers and leave. We'll handle the restaurant from here. I couldn't even process what they were saying. This restaurant was my grandfather's legacy. It had been thriving for years and was beloved by our regular customers. You're not willing to make changes, Michael continued. If you keep things the same, this place will fail eventually. That's why I'll take over and do it right. They wouldn't listen to anything I said. It was clear that Michael had been completely influenced by Dave. Fine, I said, my voice calm. I'll sell you the restaurant for $500,000. Michael and Dave looked thrilled. Sure, Michael said confidently. I'll make that much money in no time. I couldn't stand their arrogance, but I kept my cool. Great, I said. Give me 2 weeks to prepare the divorce papers and the contract. Until then, don't come near the restaurant. Thinking they had won, the two agreed eagerly. They were so focused on their profits that they didn't even consider what I might be planning. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued running Sunflower as usual. One day, a regular customer asked, "Where's Michael? I haven't seen him lately." "We're getting a divorce," I said. The customer looked shocked. "Really? So what happens to the restaurant? Are you going to run it alone?" "No," I replied. "Michael is buying the restaurant from me, and I'll be leaving in 2 weeks." The news stunned them, but I quickly reassured them. "Don't worry," I said with a smile. "I've got good news." I handed them a flyer I had prepared, and they immediately looked relieved. 2 weeks later, I met with Michael and Dave. I gave them the contract to sell the restaurant and the completed divorce papers. "There," I said, "you've got everything you wanted, no more complaints." Michael didn't waste any time. He signed the contract and transferred the $500,000 to my account. "This is my restaurant now," he said, grinning. He and Dave celebrated while I quietly packed up my belongings and left. As I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what they were going to do with Sunflower. Michael and Dave reopened the restaurant the next day, full of excitement. "I've already told the employees about the changes," Michael said. "Everything should run smoothly without Kate." "Perfect," Dave said. "Let's start making money." But when the doors opened at 10 a.m., something strange happened. "Where are the customers?" Michael asked, confused. Usually, the restaurant would be buzzing with people as soon as it opened, but no one came. Even the employees didn't show up. Michael tried calling them, but none of them answered. For the first time, the brothers started to panic. When Michael stepped outside, he saw one of our regular customers walking past. "Hey, aren't you one of our regulars?" he called out. The customer paused, looking uneasy. Yeah." Michael smiled, trying to act friendly. "Great. I was worried since you didn't come when we opened. Come on in." He gently pushed the customer toward the door. The customer walked inside reluctantly and looked at the menu. "What is this?" they asked, frowning. Michael had completely changed the menu after taking over. None of the original dishes from Sunflower were on it. Instead, it was filled with strange and unfamiliar items that didn't appeal to anyone. I guess I'll try the steak," the customer said finally, not sounding excited. "Good choice, coming right up," Michael said eagerly. He and Dave got to work cooking, but it was clear they didn't know what they were doing. The customer waited and waited, getting more annoyed with each passing minute. "What's taking so long?" they muttered after 40 minutes. Finally, Michael brought the dish to the table. The customer stared at it in shock. "What is this?" On the plate were 3 tiny, burnt pieces of meat. The inside was still raw. There was no sauce, no side dishes, just a small piece of bread and a bowl of watery soup. "The meat is high quality, so we only used salt and pepper for seasoning," Michael explained proudly. "It's cooked to let you enjoy its natural flavor and rareness." The customer didn't even pick up their fork. "I'm not eating this," they said, standing up. "Wait a minute," Michael shouted. "You still have to pay. That'll be $30. $30? For this?" You've got to be kidding me. The customer snapped and stormed out, furious. Michael and Dave stood there in stunned silence. As the days went by, no one came back to the restaurant, the employees quit one by one, and the business fell apart. Meanwhile, I had opened a new restaurant in a different location. I called it Sunflower Second. The employees from the original Sunflower joined me, and the regular customers followed because they loved my cooking. The new restaurant thrived. I kept my grandfather's original menu but added new dishes to attract younger people and families. Every day, I honored my grandfather's memory while building a bright future for myself. I was very busy, but it felt satisfying. Meanwhile, Michael and Dave were struggling. They had borrowed money to pay me the $500,000, and now they were getting constant reminders about their debt. What are we going to do about this? Michael asked, clearly stressed. You're the one who started this mess, Dave snapped back. You should figure it out. Dave had not expected things to go this way and was unsure what to do. Suddenly, he seemed to come up with an idea. I have a good plan. Without warning, Michael and Dave came to my new restaurant during the busy lunch rush to carry out Dave's good plan. Help us, Kate, Dave yelled loudly, not caring about the customers. Michael hurt his arm and can't cook anymore, Dave said. We'll return the restaurant to you, but can you give us back the money we paid for it? I stayed calm and replied, the original Sunflower is your restaurant now. You signed the contract. You need to be responsible and make it work. I didn't take them seriously and tried to get back to my work. Then, Michael walked in, looking like he was in pain. Kate, help me, he said, acting like it was a big emergency. I ignored him and tried to head back to the kitchen, but the customers started whispering. Wow, what happened to him? That looks really bad. Is he okay? Hearing them, I turned and looked at Michael, and I was shocked to see a large bruise on his arm. Wait, are you really hurt? I asked. Yes, he said dramatically. I've been telling you. Then go to the hospital right now, I said, feeling worried. I quickly called a cab and sent him to the hospital. Later, during my lunch break, I went to check on him at the hospital. I saw Michael leaving the building, like he had just finished a checkup. When I tried to ask him what had happened, he quickly turned away and ran off with Dave. Something didn't seem right, so I went to the hospital reception to ask. I think a man named Michael came in for an exam. I'm here to pick him up, I said. The receptionist looked confused and checked the records. Sorry, there's no record of a Michael here for a checkup. Maybe he went to another hospital, she said. I was suspicious. Michael had never seen a doctor, and the way they had run off made me feel like they were hiding something. I quickly got in my car and started driving around to look for them. A few minutes later, I saw Michael and Dave walking. I stopped my car, got out, and grabbed Michael's arm. I knew it, I said. I looked closely at his arm and saw that the bruise was gone. Michael and Dave tried to run, but I held on to his arm tightly. My angry look made them stop. Why is the bruise gone? You're not really hurt, are you? I demanded. Michael sighed. I didn't realize running a restaurant would be so hard. No customers are coming to the original Sunflower, so we're losing money. We can't even pay off the debt. I pretended to be injured to avoid working, hoping you'd give us the money back. Unbelievable, I said, shaking my head. You tried to trick me with such a silly lie? I let go of his arm and said coldly, from now on, stay out of my life. The restaurant is yours now. You deal with it. I got back in my car and drove away. As I looked at them in the rearview mirror, I felt disappointed. Eventually, Michael and Dave put Sunflower up for sale to pay off their debts, but since the building was old, they struggled to find a buyer. They worked day and night, getting constant reminders about their unpaid debts. They deserved this because they had been selfish and greedy, focusing on quick money instead of what truly mattered. Meanwhile, my new restaurant kept thriving, and my profits doubled. A loyal customer offered to be trained by me, so I now have an apprentice. I teach them the importance of hard work and humility, ensuring they don't become selfish and greedy like Michael. I continue to work hard every day to keep my grandfather's legacy alive. I'm determined to make sure Sunflower Second lasts for many years to come.
The call came on a Tuesday, exactly 15 years after my father told me I wasn't worth the air I breathed. I was in the middle of a board meeting when my assistant slipped me a note. Your mother's calling, third time today. My name is Quinn, and I built a tech empire from the ground up while my family pretended I didn't exist. Funny how life works sometimes. We need to wrap this up, I told my executives, maintaining my composure despite the tremor in my hands. Send me the final projections by tomorrow morning. In my office, I stared at my mother's number on my phone screen. The same number I'd memorized as a child, back when I still believed family meant something. Quinn. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Baby, is that you? It's me. I kept my tone neutral, professional. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind my desk, a view I'd earned while they wrote me off. We've been trying to reach you. A pause. Your father, he wants to talk. I almost laughed. 15 years of silence, and now he wants to talk. Things are different now. We've seen you in the papers, on TV, your company, what you've built. She trailed off, probably remembering the day they kicked me out. I was 17 then. Dad had gathered everyone in the living room. Mom, my brothers Damon and Rodney. No daughter of mine is going to waste time with computers, he'd declared. You'll marry well, that's your purpose. I'd refused. Packed my bags that night. Quinn? Mom's voice pulled me back. There's a family dinner on Friday. Please come. Why should I? Because, she hesitated. Your father's business. We're struggling. The market crash hit us hard. He needs my money. I finished for her. That's what this is about. No, we want to make amends. We were wrong, Quinn. So wrong. I swiveled in my chair, watching my reflection in the window. The scared teenage girl was gone, replaced by a woman in a tailored suit who controlled a billion-dollar tech company. Text me the details, I said finally. I'll think about it. After hanging up, I called Kayla, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full story of my past. They reached out. She sounded concerned. What are you going to do? I'm going to that dinner. I pulled up my calendar. But first, I need you to clear my schedule for Friday and book a table at Le Bernardin. Quinn. Kayla's voice carried a warning. Don't do anything rash. Rash? No. I smiled, remembering how Dad used to parade my brothers around at business functions while I sat in the corner, invisible. I'm going to do something spectacular. That evening, I dug out an old photo album I kept locked in my desk. There I was, 12 years old, proudly showing Dad the computer program I'd written. He wasn't even looking at me. Next to it, a picture of Damon receiving a sports trophy, Dad beaming with pride. My phone buzzed. Mom's text with the dinner details. Your father says to dress appropriately, she added in a second message. I texted back. Change of plans. I'm hosting. Le Bernardin, 8 p.m. Tell Dad his precious sons can come too. Then I called Carlos, my PR specialist. I need you to arrange something. Discreet photographers, carefully placed. Make sure they catch every moment. What's the angle? He asked. I thought about Dad's face when he'd realize his daughter now had the power to make or break him. About Mom's silent compliance all those years. About my brother's smirks when I was thrown out. Family reconciliation, I said. The prodigal daughter returns. But that's just the beginning. And the real story. I touched the photo of my 12-year-old self, tracing the hope in those eyes before it was crushed. The real story is revenge. But we're going to package it as redemption. I closed the album. They wanted a proper daughter. I'll give them a proper show. After hanging up, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Somewhere out there, my family was probably huddled together, discussing how to handle me, how to get what they needed while maintaining their precious pride. Let them plan. Let them think they could manipulate me. I'd learned from the best after all. Friday couldn't come soon enough. I had 15 years of silence to fill, and I was going to make every word count. They wanted my help? They'd get it, along with a very public lesson in karma. I picked up my phone one last time and texted Kayla, book the private room, and make sure there's champagne. We're going to celebrate a family reunion they'll never forget. Le Bernardin's private room felt smaller with my family in it. Dad arrived first, of course, Punctuality was one of his obsessions. His silver hair was thinner than I remembered, but his stance remained rigid, commanding. "Quinn." He extended his hand like we were closing a business deal. "You look successful." I ignored his hand. 15 years will do that. Mom hurried in behind him, wringing her hands, a nervous habit I'd inherited and trained myself to break. She moved to hug me, then stopped, uncertain. "Your hair," she said softly. "It's so elegant now." Damon and Rodney arrived together, both in expensive suits that couldn't quite hide their desperation. Damon's Rolex was probably his last status symbol, while Rodney's shoes were scuffed at the heels. "Little sister," Damon said, forcing a smile, "finally decided to acknowledge your family." "Funny," I replied, taking my seat at the head of the table. I was about to say the same thing. The waiter appeared with champagne, and I watched them squirm as I ordered the most expensive bottle. Dad's eye twitched. He knew exactly how much it cost. "To family," I raised my glass. "And perfect timing." Damon cleared his throat. "Quinn, about timing. Your company's incredible," Rodney interrupted, earning a glare from Dad. "I mean, the innovation awards, the Forbes cover, the money," I added, making them all flinch. "That's what you really want to discuss, isn't it?" Dad set down his glass. "We've made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Quinn," Mom pleaded. You're trying because you're desperate." I pulled out my tablet, sliding it across the table. "Your company's hemorrhaging money, Dad. 3 failed projects in 2 years. The board's considering a vote of no confidence." The color drained from his face. "How did you—" "I do my research. Unlike you, I learned from my mistakes." I tapped the tablet. "Damon's division is particularly interesting. Those investment choices. Amateur hour." Damon's knuckles went white around his fork. "You don't understand." "Actually, I do. Better than anyone." I leaned forward. "You need my help. My connections. My money. But mostly, you need my name." The waiter arrived with appetizers, and we all pretended to be fascinated by our plates. "What do you want?" Dad finally asked, his voice rough. "I'm hosting a gala next month, Women in Tech Initiative. Very prestigious, lots of media coverage." I watched their faces carefully. "You're all going to attend, as my loving, supportive family." Rodney frowned. "That's it?" "Oh, there's more." I smiled. "Dad, you'll give a speech about how proud you are of your daughter's achievements." "Damon, you'll announce a new division in your company, focused on supporting women in STEM fields." "That's ridiculous," Damon sputtered. "Our shareholders will love it. Trust me, I've done the math." I turned to Mom. "And you, Mother, will be the face of a new scholarship program for girls interested in technology." The silence was deafening. Dad's jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might crack a tooth. "And if we refuse?" he asked. "Then I'll watch from my office as your empire crumbles." I shrugged. "Either way, I win." Mom touched Dad's arm. "Colin, maybe." "Fine," he cut her off. "We'll play your game." "It's not a game." I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table. "It's karma, and we're just getting started." "You've become quite the manipulator," Damon said bitterly. "I learned from the best, big brother." I gathered my things. "Carlos, my PR specialist, will be in touch with details. Don't worry, he'll make sure you all look appropriately progressive and enlightened." "Quinn," Mom called as I reached the door. "Was any of this, did you really want to reconnect?" I turned back, seeing the hope in her eyes, the same hope I'd had all those years ago. "You know what's funny?" I said. "If you'd reached out before you needed something, this might have gone differently." I left them sitting there, surrounded by expensive food and bitter realizations. Outside, the night air felt clean, liberating. My phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. "How'd it go?" "Perfectly," I replied. "They took the bait. Call Carlos. It's time for phase 2. As my car pulled up, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked exactly like what I'd become. Powerful, untouchable, and absolutely merciless. just like they'd taught me to be. "This is delicious," Carlos said, taking another bite of his croissant. "Almost as delicious as your plan." We were in my penthouse office, surrounded by mood boards and event layouts for the gala. Kayla sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through potential media contacts. "The press will eat this up," Carlos continued. "Tech mogul reconciles with traditional family, transforming them into champions of women's empowerment. It's perfect." "Too perfect," Kayla muttered. "Quinn, are you sure about this?" I walked to the window, watching a flock of pigeons scatter across the morning sky. "Show me the speech drafts." Carlos pulled out his tablet. "I've written 3 versions for your father. This one's my favorite." I was wrong. My greatest achievement wasn't building a company. It was raising a daughter who showed me the true meaning of success. "He'll choke on those words," I said, smiling. "That's the point." Carlos swiped through more documents. "Damon's announcement about the women's STEM division is ready too. We've already leaked hints to industry blogs." My phone buzzed. "Speaking of Damon." "Excuse me," I said, stepping into the hallway. "We need to talk," he growled. "Alone." 20 minutes later, I found him pacing in the lobby of my building. He looked worse than at dinner, tie loose, hair disheveled. "Making me come to you?" he sneered. "Power move. My building, my rules." I led him to a private conference room. "What do you want?" He ran a hand through his hair. "This little revenge fantasy of yours. It needs to stop." "Or what?" "You don't understand what's at stake." He slammed his fist on the table. "Dad's company isn't just struggling. We're weeks away from collapse. The board meeting next month." "I know all about the board meeting." I sat down, crossing my legs. "Just like I know about your offshore accounts." His face went pale. "How did you—" "The same way I know about Rodney's gambling debts. The same way I know Mom's been secretly taking anti-anxiety medication for 20 years. I leaned forward. "I did my homework, Damon. All of it." "So this is blackmail?" "This is opportunity. Play your part, and I'll make sure the board sees your new initiative as innovative leadership. The women's STEM division will attract fresh investors, positive press. And if I refuse, then I'll watch you drown." I stood up. "Just like you watch them throw me out." He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "You were always the smart one," he said quietly. "Even back then." "I should have—" I pulled away. "Should have what?" "Stood up for me? Protected your little sister." "I was afraid," he admitted, "of disappointing him, of losing my place. And now you're afraid of losing everything." I straightened my jacket. Funny how life works out. Back in my office, Kayla and Carlos were arguing over seating arrangements. "The media needs clear sight lines," Carlos insisted. "Every camera should capture their faces when Quinn announces the scholarship program." "Speaking of which," Kayla interrupted as I entered, "we need to talk about your mother." "What about her?" "She called while you were gone, wanted to meet for coffee." Kayla hesitated. She seemed different. I remembered Mom's face at dinner, the way she'd almost hugged me. "Different doesn't change anything, doesn't it?" Kayla stood up. "Quinn, I've known you for 10 years. You're not just doing this for revenge. Stay focused," I snapped. "Carlos, what's next?" He checked his notes. "We need your family's measurements for the gala outfits, and we should schedule a photo shoot. Something casual, showing the reconciliation process." "Fine." I picked up a layout board. "What about the scholarship announcement?" "Already trending on social media," he grinned. "The mysterious tech CEO planning something big. Speculation is through the roof." My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. I ignored it. "Quinn," Kayla said softly. "What happens after, when the gala's over?" I stared at the mood board. At the perfect family portrait we'd create. "They learn their lesson." "And you? What do you learn?" Before I could answer, my assistant rushed in. "Ms. Quinn, your brother Damon is talking to reporters in the lobby." "What?" I pulled up the security feed. There he was, surrounded by journalists, looking straight into the cameras. My heart stopped. "He's going off script." Carlos said, already dialing his contacts. I watched Damon's lips move, unable to hear his words, but recognizing his expression, the same one he wore the night I left. Get him out of there, I ordered, now. As my team scrambled, I remained frozen, watching my carefully constructed plan teeter on the edge of chaos. Maybe Kayla was right. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about something much more dangerous, hope. Your brother's interview is everywhere, Carlos announced, tossing a stack of newspapers onto my desk. But you need to see this. The headline screamed across every front page. Tech mogul's brother confesses we failed her, and family drama behind Silicon Valley success story. I scanned Damon's quotes. Our father was wrong. Quinn proved that. Now we're trying to make amends, to be the family she deserved. He went rogue, I said. But he stayed on message. Better than on message, Carlos grinned. He cried, Quinn. Actually cried on camera. The internet's eating it up. My phone lit up. Mom again. Third time today. This time, I answered. Have you seen it? She asked. Damon's performance. Yeah. It wasn't a performance. She paused. I'm at the coffee shop near your office. Please, Quinn. 20 minutes. I found her at a corner table, hands wrapped around an untouched latte. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile. You're not wearing makeup, I observed, sitting down. I stopped. She met my eyes. After you left, it felt pointless, pretending. Like you pretended not to see what was happening to me. Her hands trembled. I was weak. Every time he dismissed you, I died inside. But I stayed silent. For 15 years. No. She reached into her bag, pulled out a worn folder. I kept everything. Every news article about you. Every achievement. I followed your journey, Quinn. In silence, in shame. But I followed it. I opened the folder. There I was, from my first startup to my IPO. Pictures, clippings, printouts from tech blogs. Some were tear-stained. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to know, her voice cracked. The scholarship program you want me to represent. I want to do it. Not for show, for real. My coffee arrived. I stirred it slowly, buying time. Dad won't like that. Your father just got a call. She leaned forward. The board is moving up their vote. They want him out, Quinn. Unless I help. I closed the folder. And what do you want, Mom? Really want? A chance. She touched my hand. Not just to fix the past, but to do something meaningful. These girls you want to help? I see you in all of them. My phone buzzed. Kayla, reminding me about the gala preparations. I should leave. This wasn't part of the plan. Show me, I said instead. What? Show me you mean it. Come to my office, meet my team, see what we're really building. An hour later, Mom stood in our innovation lab, watching young women code, create, innovate. Her eyes were wide, taking everything in. This is incredible, she whispered. Ms. Quinn, my assistant appeared. Your father's here. He's demanding to see you. I found him in the lobby, face red with anger. What did you do? He demanded. The board chairman just called. Something about a leaked memo. I have no idea what you're talking about. I smiled. But since you're here, let's talk about the gala. Carlos has your speech ready. Damn the gala. He stepped closer. You think you can destroy everything I built? No, Dad. You're doing that just fine on your own. Colin, Mom's voice cut through his rage. She stood in the doorway, steel in her spine. Enough. He blinked, surprised by her tone. Melina, I'm staying, she said. Quinn's showing me the scholarship program. You can either join us in the future or stay in your past. I watched his face cycle through confusion, anger, fear. You're choosing her? I'm choosing what's right. Mom turned to me. Where do we start? Before I could answer, Rodney burst in, out of breath. Dad, the investors, they're calling an emergency meeting. Something about new leadership. Dad's phone rang. His hands shook as he checked the screen. The chairman, take it, I said. In fact, put it on speaker. Let's all hear what the future holds. As Dad's world crumbled around him, I watched Mom explore my office, touching the awards with pride. Rodney collapsed into a chair, looking lost. Somewhere in the building, Damon's interview was probably still playing on loop. My phone buzzed one last time. Carlos, everything's proceeding as planned. But Quinn, are you sure you want to go through with the final phase? I looked at my family, scattered and broken, and maybe, just maybe, ready to rebuild. Stand by, I texted back. The game's changing. The question was I ready to change with it? The gala buzzed with energy as New York's elite mingled under crystal chandeliers. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests, while photographers captured every calculated smile. Your family's already inside, Carlos whispered, appearing at my elbow. Your father's been practicing his speech. He actually looks nervous. Good. I smoothed my midnight blue gown. Where's Mom? Talking to the scholarship candidates. She's a natural, Quinn. Those girls adore her. I spotted Damon across the room, surprisingly at ease, as he discussed the Women's STEM initiative with a group of investors. Rodney hovered nearby, actually paying attention for once. Ms. Quinn? A young girl approached, maybe 17, clutching a tablet. I'm one of the scholarship finalists. I just wanted to say, you're why I started coding. My practice smile faltered. She looked exactly like I had at that age. Hungry for recognition, desperate to prove herself. What's your name? Sarah. She pulled up her project on the tablet. I developed this app for domestic violence survivors. It looks like a normal calculator, but it sends encrypted distress signals. I finished, examining her code. This is brilliant, Sarah. Your mother said the same thing. She beamed. She's been showing everyone my work. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. Carlos appeared again. It's time. I took the stage, scanning the crowd. Hundreds of faces looked back, including my family's. Dad sat rigid in his chair, speech cards trembling slightly. Mom watched me with tears in her eyes, while my brothers tried to mask their anxiety. Welcome, I began. 15 years ago, I was told that women don't belong in tech, that our place was in the background, supporting men's dreams instead of chasing our own. The room fell silent. Today we're changing that narrative, not just through words, but through action. I gestured to the screen behind me, where images of young female coders appeared. Meet our future, 20 brilliant minds who will receive full scholarships to pursue their tech dreams. Applause erupted. I caught Sarah's radiant smile in the crowd. But first, I continued, someone else wants to share their journey of transformation. Dad? He stood slowly, straightening his tie. The cameras turned to him as he approached the podium. This was it, the moment of my triumph, my revenge. He cleared his throat, looked down at his cards, and then set them aside. I had a speech prepared, he said, his voice rough, about progress and change. But watching my daughter tonight, seeing these young women's potential, he turned to me. Quinn, I was wrong. Not just about you, but about everything. The room held its breath. This wasn't the scripted speech Carlos had prepared. I lost 15 years with my daughter because of pride and ignorance. I watched from a distance as she built something extraordinary, while I clung to outdated beliefs that were destroying my own company. Mom reached for Damon's hand. Rodney wiped his eyes. Tonight isn't about saving my business, Dad continued. It's about saving our future. These scholarships, they're named after my wife, Melina, because while I was teaching our sons to lead, she was quietly showing our daughter how to revolutionize. The cameras flashed as Mom joined us on stage, followed by my brothers. Dad turned to me, his eyes glistening. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said, but I'm asking for a chance to support the vision you've built, not as your superior, but as a father who finally sees his daughter's brilliance. The applause was deafening. Carlos gave me a thumbs up. This was better than anything we'd planned. But I barely noticed. The Melina Scholarship Fund, I announced, my voice steady despite my racing heart, will ensure that no other girl hears no when she should hear fly. Sarah and the other candidates joined us on stage. Mom hugged each one, whispering encouragement. Damon shook their hands, looking genuinely impressed. Even Rodney engaged, asking about their projects with real interest. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone with Dad on the balcony. "Did you mean it?" I asked. "Every word." He stared at the city lights. "The board voted this morning. I'm stepping down as CEO. I know. They want you to take over." He turned to me. "Not because you're my daughter, but because you're better than I ever was." Inside, I could hear Mom laughing with the scholarship recipients. Damon was exchanging contact information with investors. Rodney was actually taking notes. "The company needs new leadership," Dad said. "It needs you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never seen before: respect. "We'll talk," I said finally. "After all, I have some ideas about modernizing the family business." He smiled, and for the first time in 15 years, it reached his eyes. "Your father's speech is trending worldwide," Carlos announced, scrolling through his phone. "The video has over 10 million views. Pearson Transformation is the top hashtag." We were in the aftermath meeting, reviewing the gala's impact. The wall of screens behind us displayed news coverage from every major network. "The stock's up 30%, Kayla added. "Investors are calling non-stop. Everyone wants a piece of the new progressive Pearson empire." I stared at the footage, playing silently on the screens. Dad's emotional speech, Mom hugging the scholarship recipients, my brothers actually looking human. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," I muttered. "No," Kayla agreed. "It was supposed to be revenge. Instead, it's become a revolution," Carlos finished. "Speaking of which, Time magazine wants to do a cover story. The family that changed Silicon Valley." My phone buzzed. "Damon." "Excuse me," I said, stepping out. I found him in the company's lobby, looking up at the massive digital wall displaying our stock price. "Remember when Dad used to say women couldn't understand finance?" He gestured at the climbing numbers. "Guess he was wrong about that too." Among other things, I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Damon?" "The board approved your leadership proposal." He handed me a folder. "Dad's stepping down next month. They want you as CEO, me as COO, and get this, they want Mom to head the foundation. And you're okay with that? Working under your little sister." He laughed. "I saw the code those scholarship girls wrote. They're better than I'll ever be. Just like you always were. Flattery won't erase the past." "No," he agreed, "but maybe this will help." He pulled out his phone, showed me an email. "I'm selling my house, my cars, everything. The money's going to fund 10 more scholarships." I blinked. "What?" "Rodney, too. He's actually meeting with Sarah right now. She's helping him develop an app for gambling addiction recovery." Before I could respond, Mom burst in, practically glowing. "Quinn, the foundation just received $1 million donation. Anonymous, but..." She hesitated. "It's from your father. He sold his golf club membership and his collector cars." I sat down hard on a nearby chair. This wasn't how revenge was supposed to feel. "There's more," Damon said. "Show her, Mom." She pulled up a video on her tablet. Dad was being interviewed on a major news network. "My daughter taught me that true legacy isn't about maintaining old power structures," he was saying. "It's about embracing change, acknowledging mistakes, and working to create a better future." "And your company's new direction," the interviewer asked, "is exactly what it should have been 15 years ago, following Quinn's vision. She saw the future while I was stuck in the past. Now it's time for me to step aside and let her lead." I turned off the tablet. "This doesn't fix everything." "No," Mom agreed, "but it's a start." She touched my arm. "The girls from the scholarship program, they're asking if you'll mentor them." "I don't know if They need you," she interrupted. "Like I needed you. To show us all how to be stronger." My phone buzzed again. Carlos, with urgent news. The headlines flashed across my screen. "Tech giant announces historic all-female board," and "Silicon Valley's gender revolution begins." "Quinn, Kayla appeared, looking worried. "There's something you need to see." She led us to the conference room, where the news was playing on the big screen. A group of female tech CEOs was announcing a partnership with our foundation. They were pledging billions to support women in tech. "This is bigger than us now," Damon said quietly. Dad appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. "The press is asking for a family statement. All of us together." I looked at my family, really looked at them. Mom, standing tall and proud. Damon, finally seeing me as an equal. Dad, humbled but trying. Even Rodney, rushing in with Sarah, excitedly showing off their app progress. "Quinn," Carlos prompted. "What should I tell the press?" I thought about the scared 17-year-old girl I'd been, dreaming of this moment. But revenge had turned into something else, something bigger, more important. "Tell them," I said, "that the future doesn't belong to any one family or gender. It belongs to everyone brave enough to change." Dad smiled. "Now that's a legacy worth building." "Together?" Mom asked. I looked at the scholarship girls watching us through the glass walls, their faces full of hope and determination. This wasn't just about healing my family anymore. It was about making sure no other girl had to fight the battles I did. "Together," I agreed. "But on one condition, we do it right this time." "And how's that?" Damon asked. I smiled. "By breaking every glass ceiling we can find." "You can't hide in your office forever," Kayla said, barging in with a stack of papers. "The transition ceremony is in 2 hours." I was staring at an anonymous email that had arrived that morning. "Your family's transformation is a lie. I have proof. Meet me or it goes public." "Quinn?" Kayla waved her hand in front of my face. "Earth to CEO?" "Someone knows," I said, turning my laptop around. "About the original plan. The revenge plot." Kayla read the email, her face darkening. "Could be a bluff. Or it could destroy everything we've built." I stood up, pacing. "The scholarships, the foundation, all of it." "Quinn," Sarah burst in, her eyes bright. "Sorry to interrupt, but you have to see this." She pulled up a video on her tablet. A teenage girl was speaking at a tech conference, wearing a t-shirt with my face on it. "Quinn showed us that we don't need anyone's permission to change the world." The girl was saying, "My dad used to tell me tech wasn't for girls. Now he's helping me build my startup." "That's the 5th speech like this week," Sarah beamed. "You're starting a movement." My phone buzzed, the anonymous emailer again. 1 hour, coffee shop across the street. "I have to go," I told Kayla. "Cover for me at the pre-ceremony meeting." The coffee shop was crowded, but I spotted him immediately. Rodney sitting alone in the corner, holding an old USB drive. "You?" I sat down, stunned. "You sent the email?" "Found this while cleaning out my old room." He slid the drive across the table. "It's your revenge plan. All the details, the manipulation, everything. You left it on your computer the night you ran away." My hands shook as I picked up the drive. "Why didn't you tell Dad?" "Because I was ashamed." He looked down. "I saw what you were planning, but I did nothing. Just like I did nothing when they kicked you out. And now? Now I see what you've actually built." He gestured outside, where a group of young girls walked past wearing future tech leader shirts. "This is bigger than revenge. It's real change." "So why the threatening email?" "Because you need to let go of the past." He leaned forward. "The ceremony today. Dad's not just stepping down. He's announcing a complete restructuring. The board wants to name the new headquarters after you." "What?" "But first," he pulled out another USB drive. "You need to decide. This one has proof of what the company was really like before. The discrimination, the sexism, everything. Release it, and you get your final revenge. Keep it hidden, and we keep building the future." My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from everyone. Mom asking about the ceremony speech, Dad sending last-minute suggestions for the transition, Damon confirming the new board appointments, Sarah sharing more videos of inspired girls. "Time to choose, sis," Rodney said softly. "Revenge or revolution?" I stared at the 2 drives, everything I'd planned, everything I'd become. Quinn! Sarah appeared at our table, breathless. Sorry, but there's an emergency. The scholarship girls. They're all here. They want to show you something before the ceremony. In the lobby of my building, 30 young women stood waiting, each holding a laptop. As I approached, they opened them in unison, revealing a synchronized display across all screens. We wrote this together, Sarah explained. An AI program that identifies and counters gender bias in corporate communications. We call it the Quinn Protocol. It's already being adopted by major tech companies, another girl added. Your father's company will be the first to implement it fully. I felt tears forming. You did this. You showed us how, Sarah said simply. Now we're showing others. My phone buzzed one final time. Carlos, media's here for the ceremony. Everyone's waiting. I looked at Rodney, then at the drives in my hand. With a deep breath, I dropped them into the lobby's decorative fountain. Let's go change the world, I told the girls. For real this time. In the auditorium, I found my family waiting backstage. Mom was coaching the scholarship recipients. Dad was practicing his introduction. Damon was reviewing the new corporate structure with board members. Ready? Kayla asked, appearing beside me. I watched Sarah lead her team to their seats, their faces glowing with possibility. Watched Mom stand tall as reporters approached her about the foundation. Watched Dad prepare to publicly hand over his life's work to his daughter. Quinn? Rodney touched my arm. The revenge plot. Are you sure about letting it go? I smiled, thinking of all the girls who would never have to plan revenge because they'd be too busy planning their futures. Some things, I said, are more powerful than revenge. The lights dimmed. It was time to step into the spotlight, not as the daughter seeking vengeance, but as the leader showing the way forward. And that's how you change the world. I concluded my TED Talk, gesturing to the screen behind me where Sarah was demonstrating her latest AI breakthrough. The audience erupted in applause. Backstage, Mom waited with tears in her eyes. I still can't believe how far we've come. Speaking of which, Kayla interrupted, rushing over with her tablet. The Quinn Protocol just got adopted by every major tech company in Silicon Valley. It's officially industry standard now. And perfect timing, Carlos added, appearing with his usual impeccable timing. Because wait until you see tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. He handed me an advance copy. The headline read, Tech's Gender Revolution, How One Family's Transformation Sparked Global Change. Don't forget this, Dad said, joining us. He looked older but lighter somehow, like he'd finally set down a heavy burden. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from a father in Seattle. My daughter showed me your story. Yesterday, I apologized to her for the first time for dismissing her dreams. Today, we're building her first robot together. We get hundreds like that now, Damon said, scrolling through his phone. The foundation can barely keep up with the applications. Quinn, Sarah burst in, her face flushed with excitement. The United Nations just confirmed. They want us to launch the Global Mentorship Program next month. I smiled, remembering the scared teenage girl I'd been, plotting revenge in her bedroom. If only she could see us now. Ms. Quinn? A small voice interrupted my thoughts. A young girl, maybe 12, stood clutching a laptop. I'm sorry to bother you, but could you look at my code? Of course. I sat down, patting the chair next to me. Show me what you've got. As she opened her laptop, I noticed my father watching us, his eyes soft. He walked over, pulled up a chair. Mind if I learn too? He asked the girl. She beamed. I'm building a program that helps kids stand up to bullies. See, it works like this. Rodney joined us, then Damon, then Mom. Soon we were all huddled around the laptop, watching this young girl explain her vision for a better world. Quinn? Carlos called softly. The press is asking about the family photo. I looked at my family, really looked at them. Mom, now a fierce advocate for women's rights. Dad, mentoring young girls in coding. Damon, revolutionizing corporate culture. Rodney, using tech to help addiction recovery. All of us, transformed. Actually, I said, let's make it bigger than family. We gathered on stage, my family, Sarah and her team, the scholarship recipients, mentors, and that brave little girl with her anti-bullying code. Hundreds of faces, all part of this revolution. Wait, the photographer said, we need a caption. I thought about the USB drives at the bottom of that fountain, about revenge transformed into revolution, about fear turned into force for change. How about the future is all of us, Sarah suggested. Perfect, I said, as cameras flashed. Later, in my office, I found one last letter on my desk. It was from my younger self. I'd written it the night I left home, full of anger and plans for revenge. Dear future me, it began. I hope you make them pay for everything they did. I picked up a pen, turned the letter over, and wrote, Dear past me, we did something better than make them pay. We made them change. And in doing so, we changed too. Your anger built a revolution. Your pain created possibility. Your revenge became redemption. You won't believe this now, but someday Dad will teach coding to young girls. Mom will fight for women's rights. Your brothers will champion change. And you? You'll help thousands of girls write their own stories. That's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it transforms into something more powerful. Hope. Keep coding. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Love, Quinn. A knock at my door. Sarah again. Ready? The new scholarship candidates are here. I stood up, tucked the letter into my desk. Through my office window, I could see the city skyline, dotted with buildings where women now led companies, where girls learned to code, where the future was being rewritten. Quinn? Mom called from the doorway. Your father wants to show the girls his new mentorship program. I smiled. Tell them I'm coming. We've got work to do. Because that's the thing about changing the world. It's not about revenge or redemption. It's about revolution. And revolutions, they never end. They just grow bigger, stronger, more unstoppable, just like us.
I can still hear the sound of polite applause echoing through the school auditorium. The way it bounced off those cheap wooden panels, mixing with my parents' whispered praise for my sister. Perfect Megan. Always exceptional Megan. Their golden child, accepting yet another award, while I sat 3 rows behind them, invisible. My name is Amelia, and I learned about love through its absence. I was 13 when I realized I'd never be enough. Not in that house, not for those parents. The revelation didn't come as some dramatic explosion. It crept in slowly, like a shadow stretching across a room as the sun sets. Look at her posture, my mother whispered to my father. We did that. All those etiquette classes paid off. I watched them lean into each other, sharing their private moment of triumph, while Megan stood on stage, accepting her Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. My science fair certificate from last week was still crumpled in my backpack, unsigned. She'll be running her own company before she's 30, my father replied, his voice thick with pride, just like I always knew she would. The audience clapped again as Megan finished her speech. Something about determination and family support. I'd stopped listening. Instead, I studied my parents' faces, searching for any trace of that same pride when they looked at me. There was nothing. Daniel, my best friend, nudged me with his elbow. You okay? He whispered. I nodded, but my fingers were already tearing tiny strips from the program in my lap. They didn't even turn around once, I said, not once. They're idiots, he replied, but we both knew it wasn't that simple. After the ceremony, we gathered in the lobby. My grandmother Eleanor caught my eye across the room, her face softening with understanding. She started walking toward me, but Megan's voice cut through the crowd. Mom, Dad, Victoria wants to discuss investment opportunities for my project, Megan called out, waving over her new business partner. My parents gravitated toward her immediately, like moths to a flame. I stood there, clutching my backpack strap, waiting for them to remember I existed. Grandmother reached me first, her hand gentle on my shoulder. I saw your science project last week, she said quietly. The solar-powered water filtration system was brilliant. Thanks, Grandma. My voice cracked slightly. But it doesn't matter. Nothing I do ever matters. She squeezed my shoulder harder. It matters to me and to your grandfather. That's when I heard my mother's laugh, that special laugh she reserved for Megan's achievements. 2 patents pending already. Can you believe it, Victoria? And she's only in high school. Something shifted inside me then, like a gear clicking into place, or maybe something breaking. I watched my sister bask in their attention, watched my parents orbit around her like she was their son, and I made a decision. I have to go, I told my grandmother. I forgot something in my locker, but I didn't go to my locker. Instead, I walked to the school library, sat down at a computer, and started researching business schools, investment strategies, corporate law, everything my sister was supposedly mastering. My grandfather found me there an hour later, surrounded by printouts and notes. Planning something? He asked, settling into the chair beside me. I looked up at him, and for the first time that day, I smiled. Just preparing for my future, Grandpa. Someone once told me that the best revenge is success. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Just remember, sweetheart, revenge is a path that changes the traveler. Good, I replied, turning back to my research, because I'm tired of being invisible. As we left the library, I could still hear the celebrations continuing in the distance. Let them celebrate. Let them think everything was fine. I had 13 years of invisibility to transform into ammunition, and I was just getting started. Grandmother Eleanor's kitchen always smelled like rebellion. Today it was chocolate chip cookies, her silent protest against my mother's strict no processed sugar rule for the family. I sat at her counter, watching her deliberately portion out twice the chocolate chips the recipe called for. Your mother called again, she said, sliding the first batch into the oven. Apparently, Megan's giving a guest lecture at Harvard Business School next month. They're all flying out to support her. I focused on arranging cookie dough on the baking sheet, pressing each ball down with mechanical precision. Let me guess, they forgot to mention it to me. They assumed you'd be too busy with your little job at the library. The way she said it made it clear exactly what she thought of their assumption. The front door opened, and Grandfather George's voice carried through the house. Eleanor, is that cookies I smell? And is that our favorite granddaughter I see? I'm your only granddaughter who visits, I called back, but the familiar ache was there. Megan hadn't stepped foot in their house since she'd declared their lifestyle embarrassingly middle class at last year's Thanksgiving. Grandfather settled at the counter, spreading out his newspaper. Interesting article about Heritage Capital today. Seems they're looking for fresh talent in their analytics department. I looked up sharply. Heritage Capital, the firm where my father had tried and failed to secure a position for Megan last year. The same firm that had politely declined her application, citing lack of practical experience. Really? I kept my voice casual, but my hands had stopped working the dough. Highly competitive position, he continued, sliding the newspaper toward me. But they're specifically looking for someone with a background in both finance and environmental science. Fascinating combination. Just like my double major. The one my parents had called unfocused and impractical. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Your sister's latest Instagram post, you need to see this. I pulled it up and felt my stomach twist. There was Megan, posed in front of Heritage Capital's headquarters, caption reading, "Big news coming soon. Sometimes the best opportunities come to those who wait. # corporate success, # family legacy." She's trying to get in through Victoria's connections, I said, showing my grandparents the post, after they already rejected her. Grandmother's spatula clattered against the counter. That girl wouldn't know honest work if it bit her on her designer handbag. Eleanor, Grandfather warned, but there was a glint in his eye. Though I do wonder how she'd handle actual competition. I stared at the application requirements in the newspaper. Everything aligned perfectly with my qualifications. The ones I'd built while my parents were focused on Megan's carefully curated resume. I could apply, I said slowly. They're accepting applications for the next 2 weeks. You could, Grandmother agreed, pulling out the perfectly browned cookies. And wouldn't that be interesting? My phone buzzed again. This time, a family group text from my mother. Dinner tomorrow night to celebrate Megan's exciting news. Attendance mandatory. Grandfather reached over and squeezed my hand. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's chances, he said quietly. It's about finally taking your own. I looked at my grandmother, who was now aggressively mixing another batch of cookie dough. At my grandfather, who had accidentally left the Heritage Capital article where I would see it. At my phone, still buzzing with my mother's demands, and Megan's carefully filtered success. I need to go home and update my resume, I said, standing up, and maybe buy a new suit. Take some cookies, Grandmother insisted, packing up a dozen. Brain food for planning your future. As I drove home, I thought about all the times I'd watched Megan take what she wanted. All the times my parents had paved her way while I carved my own path in silence. The Heritage Capital application felt like more than just a job opportunity. It was a chance to step out of the shadows on my own terms. My phone buzzed one more time. Daniel. Want help with that application? I've got wine in a wicked way with cover letters. I smiled, turning toward his apartment instead of mine. Sometimes the best foundation for revenge isn't built on hatred, but on chocolate chip cookies and true friendship. And maybe, just maybe, on finally being ready to show your family exactly who you've become while they weren't watching. The family dinner invitation was a trap. I knew it the moment I walked into Rossini's, our parents' favorite restaurant for public performances of perfect family unity. The maitre d' led me past tables of watching eyes to our usual corner booth, where Megan sat like a queen holding court, Victoria Hayes at her side. My mother's smile was razor-sharp. Darling, you're late. We were just discussing Megan's new position at Heritage Capital. The words hit like ice water. I gripped the back of my chair, knuckles white. New position? Victoria made it happen. Megan beamed, reaching for her business partner's hand. Sometimes it's all about who you know, right? I sat down slowly, watching Victoria's face. There was something off about her expression, a flicker of discomfort when Megan touched her hand. Fascinating, I said, unfolding my napkin, especially since I just interviewed there yesterday. The silence that followed was exquisite. You, what? My father's voice had that dangerous edge I remembered from childhood disappointments. Oh, didn't Megan mention it? We must have passed each other in the lobby. I smiled at Victoria. The analytics department was very interested in my environmental science background. Victoria shifted in her seat. I wasn't aware you had applied, Amelia. That's actually not important right now, my mother interrupted. We're here to celebrate Megan's success. Michael, dear, didn't you want to share the other news? My father cleared his throat, reaching for his wallet. Yes, well, your mother and I have decided to help Megan with a down payment on a condo near the office. It's a significant investment in her future. The waiter appeared with wine, and I watched my mother's hands shake slightly as she reached for her glass. That's when I noticed it. She wasn't wearing her anniversary diamond, the one she'd never taken off in 25 years. How significant? I asked quietly. That's hardly appropriate dinner conversation, my father snapped. But I was watching Victoria, who was suddenly very interested in her menu. She knew something that made her uncomfortable enough to avoid meeting anyone's eyes. Actually, I continued, I've been meaning to ask about the trust fund Grandpa George set up for both of us. The one that matures next month? Megan's fork clattered against her plate. What trust fund? My mother's wineglass froze halfway to her lips. My father's face went pale. You didn't tell her? I asked, feigning surprise. About Grandpa's equal inheritance provision. The matching funds for both granddaughters. Amelia, my father warned, but the damage was done. What provision? Megan demanded, turning to our parents. What is she talking about? Victoria suddenly stood up. I should go, but Amelia, check your email tonight, about the position. She hurried away from the table, leaving behind her half-full wineglass and a thick envelope I hadn't noticed before. An envelope with Heritage Capital's logo. "Sit down, Megan," our mother hissed, as my sister started to rise. "This isn't the place." "Then where is the place?" I asked. "Where should we discuss how you've been funding Megan's perfect life? The maxed out credit cards, the second mortgage." "How dare you?" my father started, but I cut him off. "The missing anniversary ring, Mom. How much did that pawn for?" Megan's face had gone from angry to confused to something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "Victoria said the position was guaranteed," she whispered. "She said the funding was secure." "Nothing's guaranteed," I replied, standing up. "But don't worry. I'm sure our parents will figure out something. They always do. For you." I walked away from their hissed arguments, their desperate attempts to maintain control. In the restaurant's lobby, I found Victoria waiting. "The analytics position," she said quietly. "You got it. Your interview yesterday was exceptional. I wanted you to know before." She glanced back toward our table. "Before things get complicated." I nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. "How bad are their finances?" "Bad enough that Megan's position was contingent on your father leveraging assets he doesn't actually have." She handed me the envelope. "Everything's in here. I'm sorry. I didn't know about the family dynamics when I got involved." Through the archway, I could see my family's table descending into chaos. My mother was crying silently. My father was making urgent phone calls. Megan sat frozen, staring at nothing. "Sometimes," I said, taking the envelope, "the truth is the best revenge." I walked out into the night, leaving behind the carefully constructed facade of the Turner family success story. In my bag, the envelope felt heavy with possibilities and consequences. The Heritage Capital envelope sat unopened on my kitchen counter for 3 days. Daniel watched me circle it like a shark, coffee cup in hand, each morning before work. "Just read it," he said on the 4th morning, sliding a fresh cup toward me. "Whatever's in there can't be worse than what you're imagining." I traced the logo with my finger. "Victoria said it was bad, but how bad can—" My phone buzzed. Megan's name flashed on the screen. The first contact since the restaurant disaster. The text was simple. "We need to talk, alone, please." "Don't," Daniel warned, but I was already grabbing my keys. I found Megan in our old tree house, of all places, at our grandparents' house. She sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, looking smaller somehow, less polished than usual. A manila folder lay in her lap. "Did you know," she asked without looking up, "about the forgeries?" My heart stuttered. "What forgeries?" She laughed, but it sounded wrong, hollow. "The patents, my precious patents. Turns out Dad's been paying people to put my name on other people's work for years." She finally looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. "Did you know?" I sank down opposite her, the old boards creaking. "No, but I'm not surprised. Victoria's threatening to expose everything unless I step down from the heritage position." She pushed the folder toward me. But that's not even the worst part. Inside were bank statements, property liens, and a document that made my blood run cold. A power of attorney form with my grandfather's signature. Dated last week. "Dad's been embezzling from Grandpa's accounts," Megan whispered, using his dementia diagnosis as cover. Except Grandpa doesn't have dementia," I finished. The pieces clicked into place. The trust fund questions, Victoria's discomfort, our mother's missing ring. "They've been lying to everyone," Megan continued, "building this perfect facade while stealing and cheating and—" She broke off, hands shaking. "I thought I earned it all. I really believed—" The treehouse door creaked. We both jumped as our grandmother's head appeared. "I thought I'd find you two here," Eleanor said, climbing up with surprising agility. "I see you've found some answers." "You knew?" Megan asked. "I've known for months." Eleanor settled between us, her face hard. "Your grandfather and I have been gathering evidence. We needed you both to see the truth for yourselves." My phone buzzed again. A message from Victoria. "Board meeting tomorrow. Both Turner sisters requested to attend, decision time." "They're going to lose everything," Megan said quietly. "The house, their reputation, maybe even face charges." I thought about the Heritage Capital envelope still sitting on my counter. About years of watching my parents architect their elaborate deceptions. About Megan's face when she realized her whole life was built on lies. Maybe they deserve to lose it all, I said. Maybe we all do. Megan stood up, brushing dust from her designer pants. I'm going to decline the heritage position, and, she hesitated, I'm going to tell Victoria everything. About the patents, the fraud, all of it. Eleanor reached for my hand. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't taking something from someone, she said softly. Sometimes it's letting them face the consequences of their own actions. I watched Megan climb down, looking more like my sister than she had in years. The manila folder sat heavy in my lap, filled with evidence of our parents' betrayal. But something else weighed heavier. The realization that my revenge fantasy had never accounted for collateral damage. What happens now? I asked Eleanor. She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. Now you go home and open that envelope from Heritage. Make your decision based on what you want, not what will hurt them most. As I drove home, my phone lit up with notifications. Megan was already talking to Victoria. My parents were calling repeatedly. But all I could think about was that envelope waiting on my counter, and how revenge sometimes looks different than we expect. Daniel was still there when I got home, the envelope now accompanied by takeout containers and 2 glasses of wine. Ready? He asked. I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight one last time. Ready to find out what justice really looks like. The Heritage Capital boardroom felt like a tomb. 15 pairs of eyes watched as Victoria laid out the evidence. Financial records, forged patents, falsified credentials, all neatly arranged like funeral flowers. As you can see, Victoria concluded, the situation with the Turner accounts requires immediate action. I sat at one end of the table, Megan at the other. Between us lay the wreckage of our family's carefully constructed lies. My sister's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. The board requires an explanation, the CEO stated, his gaze shifting between us. Miss Turner, either of you. Before I could speak, my father burst through the doors. This meeting is unnecessary, he announced, straightening his tie. I can explain everything. Michael, Victoria warned, but he was already launching into his performance. A simple misunderstanding about family investments, he said smoothly. Nothing that can't be resolved privately. I watched him deploy the same tactics that had worked for decades. The confident smile, the subtle manipulation, the implied threats wrapped in courtesy. But something was different now. Actually, Megan interrupted, standing up, I'd like to make a statement. Our father's smile flickered. Sweetheart, let me handle. I've been accepting credit for other people's work since I was 16, Megan continued, her voice growing stronger. The patents aren't mine, the credentials are enhanced, and the financial records. She looked directly at me. I'm sorry, Amelia, I knew about some of it. Not all, but enough. The boardroom erupted in whispers. Victoria slid a document toward me, my official offer letter for the senior analyst position. Next to it lay Megan's resignation. My father's mask cracked. You ungrateful! He lunged for the documents, but security was already moving in. Mr. Turner, the CEO's voice cut through the chaos. I suggest you leave before we contact the authorities. As security escorted him out, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Your grandmother needs you. Emergency. I found Eleanor in the hospital waiting room, her usual composure shattered. Your mother tried to access your grandfather's accounts one last time, she said. When he confronted her, she... Is he okay? Mild heart attack, he's stable. She gripped my hand. But there's more. Before this happened, he changed his will. Everything goes to you now. Not just your share. Everything. My phone kept buzzing. Missed calls from my parents. Messages from Megan. Emails from Heritage Capital demanding decisions. The weight of it all pressed down like concrete. I never wanted this, I whispered. No? Eleanor's voice turned sharp. Then what did you want, Amelia? Revenge? Justice? Or just for someone to finally see you? The truth hit like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on exposing their lies, I hadn't noticed how much I'd started to mirror them, measuring success in destruction, victory in others' losses. A commotion erupted down the hall. My mother's voice, shrill and desperate. "You can't keep me from my own husband." "Watch me," Megan replied. I turned to see my sister blocking our mother's path, looking more like our grandmother than ever. "Choosing sides now?" I asked, as Megan joined us. "Choosing truth," she replied. "Finally." My phone buzzed one last time. Heritage Capital needed an answer about the position. Accept or decline. Take everything or walk away. Continue the cycle of ambition and revenge, or break it entirely. Eleanor watched me stare at the message. "Your grandfather once told me that true power isn't in what you can take from others," she said. "It's in what you choose to walk away from." I looked at my sister, who had lost everything she thought she wanted and found something real instead. At my grandmother, who had watched this tragedy unfold for 2 generations. At my phone, still buzzing with the echoes of ambition and destruction. "I need to make a call," I said, standing up, "but not to Heritage Capital." Megan's eyes met mine, understanding dawning. "The prosecutor's office?" I nodded. "Someone needs to stop the cycle. Might as well be us." As I walked away to make the call that would finally end our family's legacy of lies, I heard my grandmother whisper to Megan, "Sometimes the greatest revenge is choosing to be nothing like those who hurt you." The prosecutor's preliminary hearing fell on the same day as my Heritage Capital promotion party. I stood in my apartment, staring at 2 outfits laid across my bed, a sharp courtroom suit and a celebration dress. Daniel watched from the doorway, coffee in hand. "You could cancel the party," he suggested, "and let them win again." I smoothed the dress's fabric. "Everything's arranged. Victoria's bringing the board members. Grandfather's being released from the hospital specifically to attend." My phone lit up with a news alert. Turner Financial. Under investigation. Prominent family faces fraud allegations. Below it, a photo of my parents leaving their lawyer's office, my mother's face hidden behind large sunglasses, my father's hand raised against the cameras. "They're calling it a witch hunt," I said, scrolling through the article, claiming Megan and I orchestrated this out of jealousy. Speaking of Megan, Daniel nodded toward my window. She stood on the sidewalk below, looking up at my building. Even from here, I could see she'd lost weight, her designer clothes hanging loose. When she spotted me, she held up a manila envelope. 10 minutes later, she sat at my kitchen counter. "They're trying to pin everything on me," she said, pushing the envelope toward me. "Dad's lawyers say I acted alone, forged his signatures, manipulated the accounts without his knowledge." "That's ridiculous," I started, but she cut me off. "I'm pleading guilty." The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel quietly left the room. "You can't," I said. "We have evidence." "They have evidence too. Real or manufactured, it doesn't matter." She looked older suddenly, tired. "Someone has to take the fall. Better me than both of us." "This isn't what I wanted," my voice cracked. "I wanted justice, not..." "Justice?" She laughed bitterly. "Look around, Amelia. There's no justice here, just wreckage." My phone buzzed. The Heritage Capital CEO. "Reconsidering position in light of recent developments. Need to meet before announcement party." They're pulling the offer, I realized. Everything we've done, everything we've lost, and they're still winning. Megan stood up. "The party's in 3 hours. Make it count." She left before I could respond, the manila envelope still sitting between us like a bomb. The Heritage Capital boardroom felt colder this time. Victoria wouldn't meet my eyes as the CEO spoke about public perception and company image. I watched my career evaporate in carefully worded corporate speak. "We understand this is disappointing," he concluded. "Disappointing?" I stood up slowly. "You know what's disappointing? Watching your parents build an empire on lies. Watching your sister sacrifice herself to protect them. Realizing that even when you win, you lose." Victoria finally looked at me. "Amelia, the party starts in an hour," I continued. "Every major financial player in the city will be there, expecting to celebrate my promotion." Should I tell them the truth about Heritage Capital's integrity, about how quickly you abandon principles when things get complicated? The CEO's expression hardened. Are you threatening us, Miss Turner? I'm offering a choice, the same choice you're giving me. My phone buzzed again. Grandmother Eleanor, your grandfather's had another episode. We can't make it tonight. I'm so sorry. The hits kept coming, each one chipping away at whatever was left of my resolve. By the time I reached the venue, I felt hollow. Daniel met me at the entrance. We can still cancel. No, I said, watching the guests arrive. We're going to give them exactly what they expect, a perfect performance, just like my parents taught us. I spotted my mother in the crowd, thinner but still elegant, still playing her part. Megan stood alone by the bar, already drawing sympathetic glances. My father was notably absent, probably meeting with lawyers, planning his next move. Ladies and gentlemen, the Heritage Capital CEO's voice boomed through the speakers. We have an announcement about tonight's celebration. I gripped my champagne glass tighter, feeling the stem threaten to snap. The crowd turned expectantly, eager for another helping of Turner family drama. Time to face the music, I muttered. Daniel squeezed my hand. Remember what your grandmother said about true power? But all I could think about was how revenge felt exactly like failure, and how sometimes winning meant losing everything you thought you wanted. The CEO approached the microphone, and I straightened my spine, ready for one last performance in this family tragedy we'd all helped write. The Heritage Capital CEO never finished his announcement. My father burst through the doors, Victoria Hayes at his side, both clutching identical manila folders. I think, my father announced to the stunned crowd, we should discuss the real reason we're here tonight. The room shifted like a living thing, guests gravitating toward the promised drama. I caught Megan's eye across the space. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Michael, Victoria stepped forward, her voice carrying. Don't do this. He ignored her, addressing the crowd. My daughters have orchestrated quite a performance, a tale of parental neglect, financial misconduct, and corporate espionage. But they forgot one detail. He opened his folder, the paper trail. Interesting timing, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Considering Megan's guilty plea was filed this morning. The crowd murmured. My mother's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. A plea she's withdrawing, my father countered, after discovering who really manipulated the accounts. He pulled out a document, but before he could continue, Victoria stepped between us. That's enough, Michael. Tell them who really wrote those documents. Tell them about the offshore accounts. Tell them about Eleanor. The room went silent. My grandmother's name hung in the air like smoke. What about Eleanor? My mother's voice cracked. She's been playing us all, my father said, for years. Oh, setting up accounts, documenting conversations, building a case. To protect her granddaughters. Eleanor's voice cut through the room. She stood in the doorway, Grandfather George beside her in a wheelchair. Someone had to. By destroying our family, my mother demanded. By saving what was left of it. Eleanor moved through the crowd like a queen. I watched you break these girls for 20 years, one with impossible expectations, the other with calculated indifference. Did you really think I'd let that continue? Victoria opened her own folder. Mrs. Mitchell provided evidence of systematic financial manipulation dating back to Amelia's 13th birthday, the same day as Megan's first major award. My father lunged for the documents, but Daniel stepped between them. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording everything. It's over, Dad, Megan said quietly. I'm not taking the fall for you anymore. After everything we gave you gave her a prison, I interrupted. You gave me invisibility. Grandmother gave us a choice. Eleanor reached for both our hands. I gave them the truth, and now they're giving it back to you. The Heritage Capital CEO cleared his throat. In light of these developments, the board has made a decision. He turned to me. Miss Turner, Amelia, we'd like to offer you a different position, head of our new corporate ethics division. My father laughed bitterly. Ethics? From the daughter who orchestrated her own family's downfall. No, I said. From the daughter who finally understood that real power isn't in destroying people. It's in changing systems that destroy people. I looked at Megan. Both positions are open if you want to build something real this time. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters pushing forward, phones flashing, security moving in. Through it all, I watched my parents' carefully constructed world crumble, not with a bang, but with quiet revelations and harder truths. I never wanted to destroy them, I told Eleanor later, as security escorted my parents out. I just wanted to be seen, she finished. I know, that's why I kept every receipt, every conversation, every piece of evidence. Not for revenge, but for the day you both would need to see the whole truth. Megan joined us, her designer armor finally showing cracks. What happens now? Now, I said, watching Victoria hand the final documents to the prosecutors waiting discreetly by the door. We build something new, something true. The party dissolved into whispered conversations and hurried exits, leaving behind empty champagne glasses and shattered illusions. But in the wreckage, I saw something I'd missed before, the possibility of reconstruction. Daniel appeared with our coats. Ready to go? I looked at the remains of our family's public implosion, my parents' disgrace, Megan's uncertainty, Eleanor's quiet victory. The weight of 2 decades of carefully documented pain finally exposed to light. Yes, I said, taking one last look at the chaos we'd created. I think we all are. The sentencing hearing fell on a quiet Tuesday. I sat in the courtroom, watching my father's shoulders slump as the judge delivered his verdict. 5 years for fraud, with additional penalties pending. My mother sobbed silently in the row behind him, her designer outfit replaced by something understated and worn. Megan squeezed my hand. She'd testified last week, her immunity deal secured in exchange for exposing the full scope of our father's schemes. Now she sat beside me instead of them, the distance between rows marking years of manufactured rivalry. The court also orders full restitution, the judge continued, to be paid to the affected parties, including Heritage Capital and George Mitchell. I caught Eleanor's eye across the aisle. She nodded once, the gesture carrying the weight of 2 decades of careful documentation, of quiet resistance, of protection offered in the only way she knew how. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like hungry birds. Victoria managed the press with practiced efficiency, steering questions toward Heritage Capital's new corporate ethics initiative rather than the family drama behind it. "Miss Turner," one reporter called out, "any comment on your father's conviction?" Before I could respond, my mother pushed through the crowd. "Amelia, please." Her voice cracked. "We can still fix this. Family means—" "Nothing," Megan interrupted, stepping between us. "Family means nothing without truth." Our mother recoiled as if struck. For the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the architect of our pain, but as someone trapped in her own carefully constructed prison of appearances. Daniel waited by the car, holding a familiar manila envelope. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this. Said it's the last piece." Inside was a single photograph. Me at 13, holding my science fair certificate, beaming at the camera. On the back, in Eleanor's elegant script, the moment I knew I had to choose sides. She was watching, I realized. All along, she was watching and documenting and waiting. "Not waiting," Eleanor said, appearing beside us. "Preparing. There's a difference between revenge and justice, dear. Revenge burns fast and leaves ashes. Justice takes time and leaves room for growth." At the office later, I found Megan in our shared space, reorganizing files. The corporate ethics division plaque gleamed on the wall between our degrees. Both real now, both earned. "Dad's lawyer called," she said without looking up. "He wants to appeal. Let him." I settled at my desk. The evidence speaks for itself. "That's not what I meant." She finally met my eyes. "He wants us to support the appeal. Says he'll reveal grandmother's role if we don't." I thought about the photograph in my bag, about choices and consequences, and the slow burn of truth. Tell him to go ahead, I said. Some stories need to be told completely. Victoria knocked on our door, tablet in hand. Board meeting in 10. They want to discuss expanding the ethics initiative nationwide. As we walked to the conference room, I caught our reflection in the glass walls. Two sisters, moving in sync, no longer separated by manufactured competition. Behind us, our team carried folders filled with new cases, new chances to prevent other families from fracturing under the weight of ambition. My phone buzzed, a message from Eleanor. Your grandfather wants you both for dinner, says he's ready to tell you about your father's childhood. Some stories can only be understood looking backward. I showed Megan the message. She smiled, a real one this time. Think we're ready for more truth? Truth isn't about ready, I replied, pushing open the boardroom door. It's about necessary. The board members waited expectantly. Their faces turned toward us. The Turner sisters, no longer divided, no longer defined by our parents' choices. I opened my presentation. The first slide, showing that old science fair project about water filtration, about making something clean from something tainted. Let's talk about transparency, I began, feeling Megan's steady presence beside me. And how to build systems that make it impossible to hide. Behind us, the city skyline stretched endless and bright, full of buildings and boardrooms and families just like ours, full of stories waiting to be uncovered, truths waiting to be told, full of chances to choose justice over revenge, growth over destruction, truth over appearance, full of possibilities we'd finally learned to see.
The brass key felt cold in my palm as I stood at the front door of my childhood home, the same door I'd walked through thousands of times before. Something felt off. The familiar welcome mat was gone, replaced by a generic gray one I didn't recognize. My name is Stella, and this was the moment my world started to crumble. I inserted the key, but it wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again, jiggling it slightly. Nothing. That's when I noticed the new deadbolt above the original lock. Can I help you? A woman's voice startled me. I turned to see a stranger standing on my front porch, keys in hand, looking at me suspiciously. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake, I said, my voice shaking. This is my parents' house. The woman's expression softened slightly. Oh, you must be confused. We bought this house last month. The Wilkinsons sold it to us. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. I'm their daughter, they would have told me. I'm sorry, she said, clearly uncomfortable. But we have all the paperwork. Maybe you should talk to your parents. I stumbled backward, nearly falling down the porch steps. My phone was in my hand before I reached my car, fingers trembling as I dialed my mother's number. Stella, honey, Mom's voice was too bright, too cheerful. What a surprise. Where are you? I demanded. A pause. We're at home, dear. No, you're not. Because I'm standing in front of our house, and some woman is telling me you sold it. My voice cracked. Please tell me this is a mistake. Another pause, longer this time. I heard murmuring in the background. Dad's voice. Sweetheart, we were going to tell you, Mom said finally. We've moved to that lovely condo complex on Maple Street. Your father's medical expenses. Medical expenses? I interrupted. What medical expenses? Dad was fine last week. Well, there have been some complications. Look, why don't you come over? We can explain everything. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the visitor parking at an upscale condo complex. My parents were waiting in the lobby, both looking guilty, but somehow defensive. How could you? I demanded, not caring that my voice echoed through the marble-floored space. That was our home. I grew up there, all my memories. Now, Stella, Dad stepped forward, using his lawyer voice. Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. Don't patronize me. I'm 29 years old, not 9. You sold our house without even telling me. Lower your voice, Mom hissed, glancing around nervously. Come upstairs, and we can discuss this like civilized people. Their condo was immaculate, with new furniture I'd never seen before. The sight of it made me sick. Your father's heart condition, Mom began. What heart condition? I cut her off. Stop lying to me. Dad's face reddened. Young lady, You do not get to come in here and make demands. What we do with our property is our business. Our business, I repeated numbly. That house was my inheritance. You promised. Plans change, he said dismissively. Now would you like some coffee? I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls. In the parking lot, I realized I needed to use the bathroom. The lobby had one, so I ducked in quickly. That's when I saw it, poking out of the garbage can, a crumpled receipt. I wouldn't have noticed except for the string of zeros. Something made me pull it out. It was from a luxury car dealership. 2 cars, purchased last month, right after they sold the house. The total made my head spin. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please come back up, we can explain everything. I took a photo of the receipt and walked out into the sunshine, my whole body numb. There had never been any medical expenses, no heart condition, just 2 selfish people who'd traded away their daughter's inheritance for a pair of shiny new cars. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror, standing on their fancy new balcony. Dad was already on his phone, probably calling to damage control the situation. Mom was wringing her hands, her favorite worried gesture when things didn't go according to plan. I'd always known they could be selfish, but this was beyond betrayal. This was war. And as I merged onto the highway, heading back to my apartment, one thought kept circling in my mind. They had no idea what they'd just started. You're not actually going to live in this shoebox, are you? Violet stood in the middle of my new studio apartment, hands on her hips, surveying the cramped space with obvious disapproval. It's all I can afford right now, I said, unpacking another box of kitchen supplies. Besides, it's just temporary. Temporary. She perched on the edge of my fold-out couch. What are you planning? I slammed a pot down harder than necessary. I don't know yet, but I'm not letting them get away with this. Stella, Violet's voice softened. I get that you're angry, but you need to think about yourself right now, not revenge. Why not both? I managed a weak smile. Actually, I already have an idea. Remember that overtime project Albert mentioned last week? The one that would basically eliminate your social life for the next 6 months. I nodded. I'm taking it. And I'm asking for that promotion I've been putting off. The senior analyst position. Violet's eyes widened. I thought you said you weren't ready. I wasn't, but things change. I started folding moving boxes. I need to build up my savings, fast. And what exactly are you saving for? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Mom's face appeared on the screen. Her 5th call today. I declined it. They're still trying to reach you? Violet asked. Them, their lawyer, even my aunt. I showed her the missed calls. Apparently, I'm being unreasonable by not accepting their explanation. Which is what exactly? Oh, it changes every time. First it was Dad's non-existent heart condition. Then it was investment opportunities. Now they're claiming they needed to downsize for retirement. I laughed bitterly. Retirement in matching Mercedes, apparently. Violet stood up suddenly. Get your coat. What? Why? Because you're spiraling. And I'm not watching my best friend self-destruct. We're going for a drive. An hour later, we were sitting on a quiet beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. The salt air cleared my head, making everything seem a little less overwhelming. Remember when we came here after Brad dumped you? Violet asked. And you made me write his name in the sand so the tide could wash it away. I smiled at the memory. Seemed silly at the time, but it helped. Exactly. She handed me a stick. So maybe it's time for some more sand therapy. I took the stick and walked to the wet sand near the water's edge. In large letters, I wrote, betrayal. Below it, I added lies and greed. Feel better? Violet asked as the first wave lapped at the letters. A little. I watched as another wave erased half of betrayal. I just keep thinking about all the memories in that house. My height marks on the kitchen door frame. The treehouse Dad built when I was 8. The window seat where I used to read for hours. Those memories are still yours, Violet said gently. No one can take them away. But they took everything else. I blinked back tears. And for what? so they could show off to their country club friends? Then make them regret it. Violet's voice had an edge I'd never heard before, not with anger or revenge, but by succeeding despite them. I turned to look at her. What do you mean? Take that promotion, work the overtime, save your money, show them you don't need their inheritance or their approval. She squeezed my shoulder. And when you're ready, we'll figure out the next step together. Back in my tiny apartment that evening, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. Column 1, current savings. Column 2, monthly income. Column 3, potential overtime earnings. Column 4, estimated promotion salary increase. As I plugged in the numbers, a plan started forming. It would take time, sacrifice, and more work than I'd ever done in my life. But maybe, just maybe, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad's lawyer, Vic. "Stella," he said when I answered, "your parents are worried about you. Are they worried about me or worried about how this looks to their friends?" He sighed. "They'd like to meet. To explain their position. Their position is pretty clear from the matching luxury cars in their driveway. Sometimes parents make mistakes. Goodbye, Vic." I hung up and added another column to my spreadsheet. Target amount needed, the current market value of my childhood home. It was crazy, impossible even. But as I stared at the numbers, something inside me shifted from despair to determination. They thought they could just write me off, throw away our family history for a couple of status symbols. I was about to prove them very, very wrong. 3 months of 60-hour work weeks had left me exhausted but focused. I barely noticed the country club's opulent decor as I delivered the quarterly reports to Albert's board meeting. This was just another stepping stone. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you simply must see our new cars." My mother's distinctive laugh carried through the partially open door of the ladies' lounge. "The interior is all hand-stitched leather." I froze, files clutched to my chest. "And Daniel's is the sport edition," she continued proudly. "Cost a fortune, but we deserved something nice after all these years of maintaining that old house." My knuckles went white against the manila folders. "But what about your daughter?" another voice asked. I heard she was quite upset about the sale. "Stella's always been dramatic," Mom dismissed. "She'll get over it. Besides, what we do with our money is our business." I backed away from the door, bumping into someone. "Whoa, careful there." Skylar from accounting steadied me. His smile faded when he saw my face. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed. "Just need some air." Outside, I gulped in deep breaths of the autumn morning. My phone buzzed. A text from Albert. "Board loved your presentation. Promotion's yours if you want it." I texted back immediately. "I want it." "Everything okay?" Skylar had followed me out. "You kind of ran out of there." "Just family drama." I tried to smile. "Nothing important." "Ah, the famous family drama." He leaned against the wall beside me. "The whole office has been wondering why you've been working like a woman possessed. Has it been that obvious? Let's see. First one in, last one out. Volunteering for every overtime project." He counted off on his fingers. "Yeah, a little obvious." I laughed despite myself. "I have my reasons." "Want to talk about it over coffee? I know a place that makes incredible lattes." Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Stella Wilkinson?" a formal voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Marcus Reynolds from the Federal Banking Commission. We're conducting an investigation into certain financial transactions, and we'd like to ask you some questions about your parents, Daniel and Louisa Wilkinson." My heart stopped. "What kind of investigation?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Could you come to our office tomorrow morning?" I wrote down the address with trembling hands. "What was that about?" Skylar asked after I hung up. I'm not sure." I looked at him. "Rain check on that coffee. I need to make some calls." Back at my desk, I Googled Marcus Reynolds. He was legitimate, a senior investigator with an impressive record of fraud cases. But why was he investigating my parents? My phone buzzed again. A text from Dad, call immediately, important. Then one from Mom, please sweetheart, we need to talk. Even Vic the lawyer tried. Stella, your parents need your help, please respond. I ignored them all and called Violet instead. The banking commission, she whispered, trying not to be overheard at her own office. That sounds serious. I know, but why contact me? I haven't spoken to them in months. Maybe that's exactly why. You're an outside observer. My other line beeped. Dad again. They're blowing up my phone, I said. Something's got them scared. Good, Violet said firmly. Let them sweat. After work, I stopped by the local coffee shop to clear my head. The barista had just handed me my drink when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Stella. It was Vic, my parents' lawyer, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I have nothing to say to you or them. This is serious. He lowered his voice. There's an investigation. Your parents, they may have made some mistakes. Like selling my childhood home without telling me? Like possibly misrepresenting some financial documents. He glanced around nervously. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but they're in trouble. Real trouble. And that's my problem because they're your parents. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. Whatever they did, they're still family. I looked at him for a long moment. They stopped being family the day they decided their social status was more important than their daughter. Stella. Goodbye, Vic. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Wilkinson, this is Investigator Reynolds again. One more thing. Please don't discuss our conversation with your parents. It's crucial to our investigation that they remain unaware of our contact. I smiled for the first time that day. Karma, it seemed, had finally come calling. The repo men came on a Tuesday morning. I only knew because Skylar's cousin worked at the Mercedes dealership and texted him about it. 2 shiny cars towed away from my parents' fancy condo complex while their country club friends watched from their balconies. They apparently missed 3 payments, Skylar told me over lunch. The dealership manager said your dad threw a fit, threatened to sue everyone. I stirred my soup, trying to suppress the satisfaction bubbling up inside me. Karma's a funny thing. There's more. He leaned forward. The bank's freezing their accounts. Something about suspicious transactions. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with Investigator Reynolds' number. Ms. Wilkinson, he said when I answered. Thank you for coming in yesterday. We've made significant progress in our investigation. What exactly did they do? I asked, stepping away from the table. Your parents took out several loans using fraudulent documentation. The house sale appears to have been part of a larger pattern of financial misrepresentation. My legs felt weak. Are they going to be arrested? That depends on their cooperation. We'll be executing a search warrant this afternoon. I hung up and returned to the table, my soup forgotten. Everything okay? Skylar asked. I think my parents are about to lose everything. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And how do you feel about that? I don't know. I pulled my hand back. Part of me wants to enjoy watching them suffer, but they're still your parents. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. At 5, Violet appeared at my desk. Come on, she said. You shouldn't be alone right now. We drove to her apartment, where she poured 2 glasses of wine and turned on the news. There, on the local channel, was my father being led out of his condo in handcuffs. Daniel Wilkinson, prominent local attorney, the reporter announced, was taken into custody today following allegations of financial fraud. I clicked off the TV. Stella, Violet watched me carefully. Talk to me. I should be happy, I said. They betrayed me, lied to me, sold my home for luxury cars they couldn't even afford. This is exactly what they deserve. But seeing Dad in handcuffs, I took a shaky breath. It feels wrong. My phone buzzed. Mom's number. Don't answer it, Violet warned. I answered anyway. Stella, please, Mom was crying. They've taken everything. Our accounts, our cars, your father. We need you. Like I needed you when you sold my home. We made a mistake. she sobbed. We got carried away, trying to keep up appearances. Please, sweetheart, help us. How exactly did you expect to keep up appearances with fraudulent loans? Silence. Then, how did you know about that? Goodbye, Mom. I hung up as someone knocked on Violet's door. It was Vic, looking haggard. You shouldn't be here, I said. I had to warn you. He glanced nervously over his shoulder. They're going to try to drag you into this. Your parents, they're claiming you knew about the fraud. What? I stood up so fast my wine glass toppled. That's insane. They're desperate. He loosened his tie. Look, I'm probably violating about a dozen ethical rules here, but I couldn't let them blindside you. They're saying you helped prepare the fraudulent documents. But I didn't. I knew nothing about this. I believe you. He pulled out a business card. This is the contact information for Sandra Mills. She's an excellent criminal defense attorney. Call her first thing tomorrow. After he left, Violet helped me clean up the spilled wine. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking karma worked a little too well. I sank onto her couch. I wanted them to face consequences, but not like this, and I definitely didn't want to get dragged into their mess. Maybe this is your chance, she said slowly. My chance for what? To finally break free. To stop letting their drama control your life. She sat beside me. Think about it. You've been working yourself to death, obsessing over getting back at them. Maybe it's time to let go. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time, calling from jail presumably. Or, I said, declining the call. Maybe it's time to fight back harder than ever. I pulled up Sandra Mills' contact information and typed out a message. My parents are trying to frame me for their fraud. I need your help. The response came quickly. My office, 8 a.m. tomorrow. Bring any documentation you have of your non-involvement. I looked at Violet. Want to help me dig through some files tonight? She grabbed her keys. Let's stop by the liquor store first. Something tells me we're going to need more wine. Your parents really messed up this time, Sandra said, reviewing the documents spread across her desk. But their attempt to implicate you is falling apart. Your work records prove you were nowhere near their office when these documents were created. I slumped in relief. 2 weeks of legal meetings and sleepless nights had led to this moment. So I'm in the clear? Better than that. She shuffled some papers. The prosecutor wants you to testify against them. My stomach lurched. Testify? Your testimony could help ensure they face consequences for their actions. She leaned forward. But I understand if you're not comfortable. I'll do it. Back at work, I buried myself in spreadsheets until Skylar appeared at my desk with coffee. You look like you could use this, he said, setting down the cup. Rough morning. Just legal stuff. I took a grateful sip. Hey, you mentioned your cousin works in real estate, right? Yeah, why? I need some information about a property. I pulled up the listing for my childhood home on my phone. This one. His eyes widened. The one your parents sold. Stella, are you sure that's healthy? Probably not. I showed him the screen. But look at the price drop. 40% in 3 months? He whistled. That's steep. The new owners are getting divorced. They're motivated to sell. I tried to keep my voice casual. And with my promotion and savings. You're thinking of buying it. He pulled up a chair. Can you afford it? Maybe. With my overtime pay, and if I can get a decent mortgage rate. I showed him my spreadsheet. See? He studied the numbers. It's tight, but doable. Want me to have Sarah take a look? Would she? That would be amazing. On one condition. He grinned. You finally let me buy you that coffee I've been offering for months. For the first time in weeks, I felt myself smile. Deal. That evening, I met Violet at our usual spot. You're going to testify against your own parents. She stirred her drink. That's heavy. They tried to frame me, Vi. Besides, the prosecutor says they'll probably get a plea deal. Still, she hesitated. Are you sure this isn't about revenge anymore? It's about justice. I pulled out my phone. And maybe something else. Look at this. She scrolled through the listing photos. Your old house. But how? The price dropped significantly. With my savings and the promotion. Stella. She put down the phone. Think about this. Is buying that house really going to heal anything? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, Skylar's cousin. Just checked the property records. Interesting development. Can we meet? 20 minutes later, we were at a nearby coffee shop. Sarah, spreading documents on the table. So here's the thing, she said. The current owners are desperate to sell, but there's a problem with the original sale documentation. What kind of problem? Your parents' signatures. They're dated 3 weeks before they actually had clear title to sell. And there are some discrepancies in the financial statements they provided. My heart raced. What does that mean? It means, she smiled, that with the right legal approach, you might be able to challenge the original sale, especially given the current fraud investigation. I called Sandra immediately. It's possible, she said, after I explained. The fraudulent documentation could invalidate the sale, but it would be complicated. But possible. Yes, and given your parents' current legal troubles, they're in no position to fight it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up old photos of the house on my phone. Birthday parties in the backyard, Christmas mornings by the fireplace, quiet afternoons reading in the window seat. My phone lit up with a text from Skylar. Sarah told me about the house. Whatever you decide, I'm here to help. Another text came in, this one from Mom. Please don't testify against us. We're still your parents. I typed back. You stopped being my parents the moment you chose greed over family. Then I opened my spreadsheet again, adding a new column. Legal fees for challenging the sale. The numbers were daunting, but something else was growing stronger than the fear. Determination. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. About turning their betrayal into my triumph. I texted Sandra, let's do it. Challenge the sale. All of it. Her response came quickly. Come by tomorrow. We'll start the paperwork. I fell asleep that night, dreaming of home. Not as it was, but as it could be. Mine again. But on my terms this time. No more betrayal. No more lies. Just the sweet justice of taking back what they never should have sold. The keys under the mat, Sarah said over the phone. Take as much time as you need to look around. My hands trembled as I lifted the mat and found the familiar brass key. Different lock, same style of key. The universe had a strange sense of humor. The front door creaked open, and the smell hit me first. Musty, abandoned. The divorcing couple had moved out weeks ago, leaving the house empty and neglected. Want me to come with you? Skylar asked from behind me. He'd insisted on driving me here. No, I need to do this alone. My footsteps echoed through the empty foyer. Paint peeled from the walls where family photos once hung. The hardwood floors, once gleaming, were scratched and dull. In the kitchen, water damage stained the ceiling. My height marks on the doorframe had been painted over, but I could still feel the grooves with my fingers. You okay in there? Skylar called from the porch. Yeah, I answered, though my voice cracked. Just remembering. The stairs protested under my weight as I climbed to the second floor. My old bedroom door hung slightly askew. Inside, the window seat where I'd spent countless hours reading was covered in dust. My phone buzzed, a text from Sandra. Good news. Judge granted our motion to expedite the sale challenge. Bad news. Your parents' lawyer is fighting back. Another buzz. Mom, we heard you're trying to take the house. Please stop this madness. I ignored both messages and walked to the window. The old oak tree still stood proud in the backyard, its branches reaching toward my window like an old friend. The inspector's report came in, Skylar said, finally coming inside. Want to hear it? How bad? Roof needs work, plumbing's iffy, but the structure's solid. He handed me a folder. Sarah says with the market conditions and the legal complications, you could probably get it for 30% below the current asking price. I flipped through the inspection photos. That would put it just within my budget. If you're sure about this, I am. I turned to face him. This house, it's more than just property. It's everything they took from me. And everything you're taking back, he added softly. My phone buzzed again. Sandra, meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Opposing counsel wants to discuss settlement. They're trying to settle, I told Skylar. Already. Is that good or bad? It means they're scared. I walked to my parents' old bedroom, now stripped bare. They know I have a case. The master bathroom light flickered when I flipped the switch. A cockroach scurried across the floor. This place needs work, Skylar said, following me. A lot of work. I know. I smiled. Isn't it perfect? He laughed. You're crazy, you know that. Crazy enough to make this happen. Back downstairs, I stood in the living room, remembering Christmas mornings, family game nights, all the moments before greed poisoned everything. My phone rang, Dad's lawyer. What do you want, Vic? Your parents are willing to help you buy another house, he said. A newer one, better neighborhood. Not interested. Stella, please. They're facing serious charges. This legal battle over the house, it's not helping their case. That sounds like their problem. They're looking at jail time. His voice dropped. Real jail time. If you drop this house business, maybe testify on their behalf. I hung up. Everything okay? Skylar asked. They're trying to bribe me. I laughed bitterly. Again. With what? A different house. Their freedom. Everything except what I actually want. Which is justice. I walked to the front door, running my hand along the wall. And this house, my house. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the overgrown lawn. The for sale sign swayed in the breeze, its reduced price banner faded and torn. Sarah can draw up an offer tonight, Skylar said. If you're ready. I took one last look at the house, not as it was now, neglected and broken, but as it could be, as I could make it. Tell her to do it, I said. But with one condition. What's that? The offer stays anonymous. I don't want my parents knowing it's me until it's too late for them to stop it. He grinned. Remind me never to get on your bad side. As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the side mirror. Soon, I thought. Soon you'll be mine again. My phone buzzed one final time. Sandra, settlement meeting tomorrow. How do you want to play this? I typed back, no settlement. We go for everything. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about coming home. The deed's been recorded, Sandra announced, sliding the document across her desk. Congratulations, Stella. The house is officially yours. I traced my fingers over my name on the paper, still not quite believing it. When are you telling your parents? She asked. Today. I checked my watch. Their sentencing hearing is in 2 hours. Want backup? Skylar asked from his spot by the window. I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. The courthouse hallway was crowded with reporters when I arrived. Mom and Dad sat on a bench outside the courtroom, looking smaller somehow in their formal clothes. No designer labels now, just off-the-rack suits that hung loose on their frames. Stella, Mom jumped up. You came. Does this mean you'll testify for us? No. I held up the deed. I came to show you this. Dad adjusted his glasses, squinting at the paper. His face went pale. He stammered. You bought the house? Anonymous buyer, I said. Ring any bells? Mom collapsed back onto the bench. But how? I worked for it. Every extra shift, every overtime hour, every bonus. I met their eyes. I earned it instead of stealing it. We didn't steal, Dad began. Save it for the judge. I cut him off. The fraud charges tell a different story. Is this what you wanted? Mom's voice cracked. To see us humiliated. To take everything from us. Everything? I laughed. Like you took everything from me? The house, my inheritance, my trust? We made mistakes, Dad said quietly. We got caught up in appearances, in what other people thought. And now, I gestured at the reporters. How's that working out for you? A bailiff appeared at the courtroom door. They're ready for you? Mom grabbed my arm. Please, sweetheart, say something to the judge. Tell them we're good parents. I pulled away. Good parents don't frame their children for fraud. We were desperate. Dad's composure finally cracked. The loans were coming due, the cars were being repossessed. And whose fault was that? I held up the deed again. I bought this house with honest money, every penny documented, every transaction legitimate. Meanwhile, you're facing jail time for fraud. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Mom's tears dried up, replaced by anger. Our own daughter, gloating over our downfall. No, Mom, I'm not enjoying this. I tucked the deed into my bag. I'm just finally seeing you both clearly. The bailiff called again. Last call. When you get out, I said, don't come to the house, don't call, don't send Vic or any other lawyers. It's over. Over? Dad's voice shook. We're your parents. Parents don't destroy their children's lives to keep up with the Joneses. I stepped back. Good luck with the sentencing. I turned to leave, but Mom's voice stopped me. What happened to you? She asked. You used to be such a sweet girl. I looked back one last time. I grew up. I learned that sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you worst. But mostly, I learned how to fight back. The courtroom doors opened, and they were led inside. Through the closing door, I heard the judge begin. In the matter of financial fraud. Outside, Violet was waiting in her car. How'd it go? About as well as you'd expect. I buckled my seatbelt. They're still trying to manipulate me. And I'm done letting them. I pulled out the deed. Take me home? We drove to my house, where Skylar was waiting with paint samples and takeout. The contractor can start next week, he said, spreading out renovation plans on the kitchen counter. Should take about 2 months to get everything up to code. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Local attorney and wife sentenced in fraud case. Want to know? Violet asked. I shook my head. It doesn't matter anymore. This isn't about them now. Then what is it about? Skylar handed me a paint chip in sage green. I looked around the kitchen, imagining new cabinets, fresh paint, clean windows, letting in the afternoon sun. It's about rebuilding, I said. Not just the house, but everything. To new beginnings. Violet raised her coffee cup. And karma, Skylar added with a grin. I held up the paint chip, matching it against the wall where my height marks used to be. Soon new marks would replace them, not of a child's growth, but of a home's rebirth. To both, I said, and to finally coming home. The last box of renovation debris hit the dumpster with a satisfying crash. I stood back, surveying my newly restored home in the warm spring sunshine. Fresh paint gleamed on the trim, new windows sparkled, and the lawn was finally starting to show green through the mud. Looking good, Skylar said, wrapping an arm around my waist. Almost as good as the woman who owns it. Smooth talker, I elbowed him playfully. Help me with the window seat cushions. Inside, the house smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. We'd kept the original hardwood floors, but refinished them to a warm honey color. The kitchen sparkled with updated appliances, though I'd insisted on keeping the old door frame, where my height marks had been. Where do you want these? Violet called from the front door, carrying a stack of books. Window seat, I directed. My reading nook is almost ready. As we arranged the cushions and books, the doorbell rang. Through the new stained glass, I saw Vic's silhouette. Stella, he said when I opened the door. You've done amazing things with the place. What do you want, Vic? He shifted uncomfortably. Your mother asked me to give you this. He held out an envelope. She wrote it in prison. I'm not interested. Please. He pressed the envelope into my hand. Just read it. That's all she's asking. After he left, I sat in my window seat, turning the envelope over and over. You don't have to open it, Violet said softly. I know, but I was already breaking the seal. Mom's familiar handwriting filled the page. Dear Stella, the thing about prison is it gives you time to think. Too much time. I think about the house, about the cars, about all the stupid shallow things we thought were important. But mostly I think about you. I watch you sometimes, through my window during yard time. I can see the roof of our old house, your house now. I've watched you restore it, piece by piece, making it more beautiful than we ever did. You did it the right way, the honest way. You've become the woman I should have taught you to be, instead of the shallow, materialistic person I was. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm proud of you. Not despite what you did, but because of it. Love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully. You okay? Skylar squeezed my hand. Actually, yes. I tucked the letter into my book. For the first time, I think she finally sees me. Speaking of seeing things, Violet grinned. Wait until you see what we did upstairs. They led me to my bedroom, where they'd hung a gallery wall of photos. Not the old family portraits, but new memories. Me and Violet at the beach during our sand therapy session. Skylar and me covered in paint during renovations. The three of us celebrating my promotion. There's room for more. Skylar pointed to empty frames. Lots more. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Sarah, carrying champagne and takeout. Housewarming time, she announced. Also, you might want to see this. She handed me a newspaper. There, in the business section. Local law firm announces restructuring following senior partner's conviction. Dad's firm is selling the building, I said, scanning the article. They're downsizing to rebuild trust in the community. Karma's still working overtime, Violet commented. Speaking of work, Skylar pulled out his phone. Albert wants to know if you'll head the new finance division. I looked around my restored bedroom, at the mix of old and new, at the people who'd helped me rebuild more than just a house. Tell him yes, I said. It's time for new challenges. We gathered in the kitchen, where Sarah popped the champagne. The cork hit the new ceiling with a thunk, making us all laugh. To Stella, Violet raised her glass. Who taught us all that the best revenge is living well and renovating better, Skylar added. To Karma, Sarah chimed in. May it always have perfect timing. I looked at my friends, my real family, gathered in my kitchen. Outside, the setting sun painted the walls gold through the new windows. Somewhere across town, in a prison cell, my mother could probably see the same sunset reflecting off my roof. To home, I said finally. Not just the building, but the feeling. The knowing who you are and where you belong. As we clinked glasses, I felt the last pieces settle into place. The house wasn't just restored, it was transformed. Like me, not erasing the past, but building something better from its foundations. So, Skylar said, pulling me close. What's next? I smiled, looking around at my beautifully imperfect life. Whatever we want it to be.
The necklace felt wrong in my hands. Something about its weight, the way the light caught the stones, it wasn't right. I'd worn Mum's sapphire pendant every birthday since I turned 16, but this year, holding it up to the mirror, I knew. This wasn't her necklace. I'm Mabel, and until this moment, I thought I understood my place in this house. Quiet, accommodating, invisible when convenient. But staring at this cheap imitation dangling from my fingers, something snapped inside me. Dad? My voice echoed through our too-large house, past the pretentious artwork Linda had insisted on hanging everywhere. Dad, where are you? The sound of newspaper rustling came from his study. He didn't look up when I entered, just kept reading about whatever stock market disaster had caught his attention today. What is it, sweetheart? This isn't Mum's necklace. I dropped the fake onto his desk, where it landed with a dull clank instead of the delicate chime I remembered. He glanced at it, then back to his paper. Don't be ridiculous. It's the same necklace it's always been. No, it's not. The original had a tiny chip in the center stone. The setting was platinum, not white gold. And the sapphire. Dad, this isn't even real sapphire. It's glass. Finally, he looked at me. Mabel, you're being dramatic. Linda had it cleaned last month, that's all. From somewhere upstairs, Chloe's music thumped through the ceiling, as if punctuating my father's dismissal. I pressed my palms against his desk, leaning forward. Where's the real necklace? I don't know what you're talking about. But his eyes flickered away, just for a second. He knew. Thomas, Linda's voice floated in from the hallway before she appeared in the doorway, all perfectly styled hair and calculated concern. Is everything all right? I heard raised voices. Everything's fine, Dad said quickly. Mabel's just confused about her mother's necklace. Linda's face softened into that sympathetic mask I'd grown to hate. Oh, sweetie, I know how much that necklace means to you, but it's exactly the same as it's always been. I wanted to scream. Instead, I straightened up, grabbed the fake, and headed for the door. But Linda's next word stopped me cold. While you're here, Thomas, we should discuss Chloe's tuition. The dance academy in Paris she's been accepted to is quite expensive, but it's such an amazing opportunity. I froze just outside the study, my heart pounding. Linda, we talked about this. That money is set aside for... For what? Mabel's already working at that little bookstore. She clearly has no interest in college. And Chloe has real talent, real potential. The silence that followed felt like a knife in my chest. You're right, Dad finally said. Chloe deserves this chance. We can transfer the funds next week. My college fund, the money Mum had insisted on setting aside for me before she died. They were going to give it to Chloe, my spoiled half-sister who'd never worked a day in her life. I clutched the fake necklace so hard the edges cut into my palm. Through the pain, a clarity emerged. They'd been doing this for years, erasing Mom piece by piece, replacing her memory with cheap imitations, just like they'd tried to replace me with Chloe. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Rachel, checking if we were still on for coffee. But I couldn't face her right now, couldn't pretend everything was normal when my world was crumbling. I heard footsteps approaching and ducked into the nearby bathroom. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The girl staring back looked older, harder. She looked like someone who'd finally had enough. The fake necklace caught the light again, mocking me with its artificial shine. I dropped it into the trash where it belonged and pulled out my phone. I had some decisions to make, and they couldn't wait until coffee with Rachel. This wasn't just about a necklace anymore. This was about everything they'd taken from me, everything they thought they could keep taking. But they were wrong. They had no idea what I was capable of. Rachel's spare bedroom felt like sanctuary and exile all at once. 3 cardboard boxes held everything I'd chosen to take from my old life. Clothes, books, and a framed photo of Mom that Dad hadn't noticed missing yet. No fake necklace. I'd left that where it belonged, in the trash. You can stay as long as you need, Rachel said, leaning against the doorframe. But are you sure about this? Your dad's going to lose it when he realizes you're gone. I smoothed the bedspread, buying time before answering. He lost me long before I left. He just hasn't figured it out yet. My phone buzzed again. The 7th call from Linda in 2 hours. I silenced it without looking. The book nook called back, Rachel said. They want you to start Monday. Perfect. I'd applied there months ago, sensing this day might come. Minimum wage and irregular hours, but it was mine. No strings attached, no family favors. The doorbell rang, and Rachel's expression tightened. That's probably them. I nodded, my hand steady as I unpacked the first box. You don't have to answer. Like hell I don't. She disappeared down the hall, and I heard the front door open, followed by Linda's theatrical sigh. Rachel, dear, we know she's here. Thomas is worried sick. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, but Mabel's an adult. If she wants to talk to you, that's her choice. This is ridiculous. Chloe's voice now, sharp with entitlement. She's just throwing a tantrum because of some stupid necklace. I moved to the doorway, silent on bare feet. From here I could see them all. Linda perfectly coiffed, despite the late hour. Chloe in designer clothes that probably cost more than my new job would pay in a month. And Dad looking smaller somehow, diminished. Mabel. Linda spotted me first. Stop this nonsense, come home. That's not my home anymore. The words came out calmer than I felt. It hasn't been since you moved in. How dare you? Chloe stepped forward, but Rachel blocked her path. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You mean like stealing Mom's necklace? Or taking my college fund for your dance lessons? Dad's head snapped up. You heard that? I hear everything, Dad. I've always heard everything. I just stopped expecting you to listen back. Sweetheart, Linda started, but I cut her off. Don't pretend you care now. Go home. Enjoy your perfect life with your perfect daughter. I'm done being the ghost in my own house. Thomas, Linda turned to my father, are you going to let her talk to me like this? But Dad was staring at me, really seeing me for the first time in years. The necklace, he said slowly. You're sure it's not the same one? Thomas, Linda's voice cracked like a whip. Yes, I'm sure. I met his gaze steadily. Just like I'm sure about where my college fund is really going. Something flickered in his eyes, doubt, maybe, or the first glimmer of understanding. But before he could speak, Linda grabbed his arm. We're leaving. When you're ready to apologize, Mabel, you know where to find us. They left, Chloe throwing one last venomous glare over her shoulder. Rachel closed the door behind them, then turned to me with raised eyebrows. You okay? No. I leaned against the wall, finally letting my hands shake. But I will be. My phone buzzed again. Not Linda this time, but Grandmother Evelyn. Her message was simple. Come see me tomorrow. There's something you need to know. I showed Rachel the text. Think it's about the necklace? Only one way to find out. She squeezed my shoulder. Want company? I shook my head. Whatever Grandmother had to tell me, I needed to face it alone. Just like I'd face everything else from now on. My new job, my new life, my new purpose. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. About taking back what was stolen, piece by piece, until there was nothing left for them to take. I looked around the spare bedroom, at my 3 boxes of carefully chosen possessions. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all you need, a starting point and a reason to keep going. Tomorrow, I'd see Grandmother. Tomorrow, I'd start piecing together the truth. But tonight, in this borrowed sanctuary, I allowed myself one moment of pure, uncomplicated grief for everything I'd lost. And everything I was about to take back. Grandmother Evelyn's house smelled like cinnamon and secrets. She waited until I'd settled into her faded armchair, tea growing cold between my hands, before she spoke. Linda sold your mother's necklace 6 months ago. The teacup rattled against its saucer. How do you know? Because I saw her at Rothschild's jewelers. Grandmother's eyes, sharp as ever at 75, fixed on mine. She claimed it was being cleaned, but I know Marcus Rothschild. He told me she brought it in for appraisal, then sold it the same day. My throat tightened. Did Dad know? Your father sees what he wants to see. She reached for a leather-bound folder on the side table. But I've been watching and documenting. Inside were bank statements, photographs, receipts, a paper trail of Linda's manipulations stretching back years. Credit card charges under Dad's name for Chloe's shopping sprees. Investment accounts drained and reopened under Linda's maiden name. She's been stealing from all of us, Grandmother said quietly, using Thomas's grief like a weapon, isolating him from anyone who might notice. Why show me this now? Because you're ready to fight back. She pulled out one final document, an application for an online business degree program. And I'm ready to help you. I stared at the application, already filled out with my details. How did you... I've been planning this since Linda sold that necklace. The tuition's covered. I've set up a private account she can't touch. All you need to do is sign. My hands shook as I took the paper. Dad will never forgive this. Your father needs to learn that forgiveness isn't always the answer. Grandmother's voice hardened. Sometimes justice matters more. The doorbell rang, startling us both. Through the window, I glimpsed Linda's Mercedes in the driveway. Perfect timing, Grandmother muttered, gathering the documents. Hide these upstairs, then come back down. Let's hear what story she's spinning today. I took the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding. From above, I heard Linda's voice, honey-sweet with concern. Evelyn, I'm worried about Mabel. She's making such rash decisions. Is that why you're here? Concern for Mabel? Grandmother's tone could have frozen fire. Of course, she's family. Like her mother's necklace was family. Silence fell like a blade. I crept halfway down the stairs, staying just out of sight. Through the railing, I watched Linda's perfect posture stiffen. I don't know what you're implying. No implications, Linda. I know you sold it, just like I know about the accounts you've been draining, the credit cards you've opened in Thomas's name. That's ridiculous. Thomas handles all our finances. Does he? Or does he sign what you put in front of him, too afraid of rocking the boat to actually read it? Linda's mask slipped, just for a moment. You can't prove anything. Want to bet? Grandmother's smile was razor sharp. I may be old, Linda, but I'm not blind, and I'm not nearly as helpless as you'd like to think. Is that a threat? Consider it a warning. Whatever you're planning with Mabel's college fund, don't. Linda laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? You'll tell Thomas? He'll never believe you over me. I'm his wife. And I'm his mother. The question is, Linda, are you ready to find out which of us he'll choose? The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I waited until Linda's car disappeared before coming downstairs. Grandmother sat heavily in her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 75 years. Well, that should keep her busy for a while. What if she tells Dad? Let her. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can fix it properly. She nodded at the application I still clutched. Are you ready? I thought about the fake necklace in the trash, about years of disappearing into the background of my own life, about Mom, who'd wanted so much more for me than this. Yes, I signed my name with steady hands. But I want to do more than just study. I need to understand everything, the business, the accounts, all of it. I need to know exactly what she's been doing. Grandmother smiled, and for a moment I saw the steel beneath her gentle exterior. Good, because that's exactly what we're going to teach you. I looked down at my signature, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming everything that had been stolen, not just a necklace or money, but my voice, my power, my place in the world. And I was just getting started. 3 months into my online classes, the headache started. My laptop screen blurred at 2 a.m. as I tried to finish another assignment between work shifts at the Book Nook. Coffee wasn't cutting it anymore. You look terrible, Rachel said, dropping a sandwich on my desk. When's the last time you actually slept? I checked my phone. Another missed call from Dad. Sleep is for people who aren't trying to rebuild their lives from scratch. You're going to crash. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter, like the cold coffee I'd been nursing for hours. My phone buzzed again, not Dad this time, but a video message from Chloe. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There she was, posing against a shiny red convertible. My college fund, transformed into German engineering. Thanks for the wheels, sis. Her laugh echoed through my tiny room. Paris is amazing, by the way. You should visit. Oh, wait, you can't afford it. Too busy playing shop girl. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers. Mabel? Rachel reached for me, but I was already moving, grabbing my coat. I need air. The night shift at the Book Nook was usually quiet, perfect for studying, usually. Tonight, the empty aisles felt like they were closing in. You're early, Marcus, the owner, said as I tied on my apron. Everything okay? Fine. I started reorganizing the already neat fiction section, trying to steady my hands. Your grandmother called earlier. He hesitated. Said something about your father coming by. The book I was holding hit the floor. What? He was here this afternoon, asking questions about your schedule. My carefully constructed walls started cracking. Dad had never visited the store before, never showed any interest in my new life. Did he say why? Marcus shook his head, but he seemed worried, different from what you described. The bell above the door chimed. I turned, expecting another late-night browser, but instead found Linda standing there, perfect as always in her designer coat. Well, she said, this is quaint. I straightened, forcing my voice steady. We're closing. Oh, I'm not here to shop. She pulled out a familiar leather folder, grandmother's documentation. My heart stopped. I'm here to make a deal. Marcus disappeared into the back, leaving us alone among the shelves. How did you get that? Your grandmother should really upgrade her home security. Linda's smile was razor sharp. Drop the online classes, stop filling Thomas's head with doubts, and these papers disappear. Keep pushing, and I'll show him exactly how his mother's been conspiring against his wife. You're blackmailing me with evidence of your own crimes? I'm offering you a choice. Back off, or watch your father lose the last bit of family he trusts. The security camera in the corner blinked steadily. Linda hadn't noticed it, too busy savoring her perceived victory. You know what's funny? I reached under the counter, pressed the button that would save the security footage. You still think this is about Dad? Her smile faltered. This stopped being about him the moment you sold Mom's necklace. I stepped closer, voice low. You want to show him those papers? Go ahead. But first, explain where the money went. Every account, every transaction. I'm sure he'd love to hear about the offshore transfers. You're bluffing. Try me. I nodded toward the camera. And maybe explain why you're threatening an employee on private property. I'm sure the police would be interested. The color drained from her face. You've changed. No, I've just stopped pretending to be the person you wanted me to be. She left without another word, but her presence lingered like poison. As soon as she was gone, my legs gave out. I slid down behind the counter, breathing hard. Marcus found me there minutes later, handed me a cup of tea. Want to talk about it? No. I pulled out my phone, dialed grandmother's number. But I need to make some changes. The game had shifted. Linda was desperate enough to break into grandmother's house, which meant we were closer to the truth than I'd realized. But she'd also shown her hand, and her weakness. It was time to stop playing defense. Time to show them exactly what happened when you push too far. The headache pounded behind my eyes, but for the first time in months, my vision was perfectly clear. The graduation ceremony felt surreal, like watching someone else's life through a fogged window. My name echoed through the auditorium. Mabel Carter, Business Administration, summa cum laude. And only 2 people applauded. Rachel and grandmother, tucked away in the back row, exactly as we'd planned. No one else knew. Not Dad, not Linda, not Chloe. They thought I was still just the quiet bookstore girl, head down, no ambitions. Marcus was waiting at the book nook afterward, a wrapped package in his hands. Congratulations, Manager Carter. I froze halfway through the door. What? Unless you're not interested in running this place. He smiled, pushing the package toward me. I'm expanding to 3 new locations. Need someone I trust to handle this one. Inside the package was a set of keys and a contract. My hand shook as I read the terms. Full management control, profit sharing, option for partial ownership after 2 years. I don't understand. Why me? Because you turned my failing bookstore into the most profitable independent shop in the city, all while getting your degree. He tapped the contract. And because you're ready. The bell chimed. Dad walked in, looking older than I remembered. Mabel. He stopped short, taking in my graduation gown. What is this? Marcus squeezed my shoulder and disappeared into the back, leaving us alone. Surprise. The word came out harder than I intended. Turns out you can get an education without a trust fund. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Or would Linda have convinced you it was just another cry for attention? He flinched. I've been trying to call you. I know. I folded the contract carefully, tucking it away. Why are you here, Dad? Linda's been... He paused, struggling. There are discrepancies in our accounts. Things I can't explain. Your grandmother suggested I talk to you. Of course she had. Grandmother's chess game was reaching its endgame. Funny timing, I said. Now that the money's gone, you're finally asking questions. That's not fair. No? I grabbed my phone, pulled up Chloe's video. Is this fair? My college fund turned into her convertible. Or how about Mom's necklace being sold without anyone asking me? He went pale. What are you talking about? Ask your wife. I handed him a copy of Linda's transaction records. Not all of them, just enough to start the cracks spreading. Ask her about Rothschild's jewelers. Ask about the offshore accounts. Ask about everything you've been too afraid to see. This can't be right. Can't it? I moved behind the counter, where I'd stood that night Linda threatened me. You know what the worst part is? I actually believed you didn't know, that she'd fooled you completely. But maybe you just found it easier to let her handle everything, including me. Mabel, please. Congratulations on your daughter's graduation, Dad. I straightened my shoulders, felt the weight of the manager's keys in my pocket. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. He left the store looking shell-shocked, the papers clutched in his hand. As soon as he was gone, Rachel emerged from the history section. You okay? No. I pressed my palms against the counter, steadying myself. But I will be. My phone buzzed. A text from grandmother. Linda's calling emergency family meeting tonight. It's starting. Another message followed immediately. Be careful. She's desperate. I thought about the security footage from that night, safely backed up in 3 different locations. Thought about the trail of evidence we'd carefully laid out, the trap slowly closing. What are you going to do? Rachel asked. The contract Marcus had offered sat heavy in my bag, representing everything I'd fought for. Everything I could lose if this went wrong. But I was done being careful, done playing the long game. I'm going to that meeting. I pulled out my keys, not just a shop girl's keys anymore, but a manager's, an owner's. It's time they learned what happens when you underestimate the quiet one. Rachel's expression shifted. Want backup? No. I locked the register, straightened the counter displays one last time. This needs to come from me, alone. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the street in shades of gold and shadow. Somewhere across town, Linda was gathering her forces, preparing for battle. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The family meeting exploded exactly as expected. Papers scattered across Dad's mahogany desk, Linda's carefully constructed lies crumbling under the weight of bank statements and transaction records. But I hadn't anticipated Chloe's announcement. I'm having a party at the Grand Rose next week, she declared, cutting through the chaos. A proper homecoming. The whole family will be there. My stomach dropped. The Grand Rose, my venue, the one Marcus had just put me in charge of managing. Absolutely not, Linda snapped. Not with everything that's already booked. Chloe's smile was pure venom. Daddy approved it last month. Right, Daddy? Dad nodded absently, still staring at the evidence of his wife's betrayal. I signed something. Perfect. Chloe turned to me. You'll come, won't you, sis? Show everyone how well you're doing with your, what was it? Book sorting. The trap was obvious. She wanted to parade her success, my stolen success, in front of everyone who mattered in our social circle. One final humiliation. She had no idea she'd just handed me exactly what I needed. Wouldn't miss it. I gathered my copies of the evidence, leaving the originals with Dad. Send me the details. Grandmother caught my arm as I left. Be careful. When cornered animals attack, they make mistakes. I squeezed her hand. Trust me. But walking into the Grand Rose the next morning, my confidence wavered. The staff, my staff, technically, were already preparing for Chloe's party. Crystal champagne flutes, imported flowers, a string quartet setting up in the corner. My phone buzzed. Linda, stay away from the party. Last warning. Another message followed. Or should we discuss how you really got that management position? My hands went cold. She couldn't know about... Miss Carter? One of the waiters approached. There's been a problem with the liquor license. And the health inspector is here. Says there was an anonymous complaint. Of course. Linda's revenge. Attack the venue. Destroy my credibility with Marcus. The next hours blurred into a nightmare of bureaucratic chaos. Every permit challenged, every certification questioned. By afternoon, 3 vendors had cancelled, citing payment concerns. The string quartet backed out after receiving an anonymous email about the venue's financial instability. I found myself in the empty ballroom, surrounded by half-finished decorations and mounting disasters. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, Marcus wanting updates, staff asking for direction, Linda's threats becoming more specific. "Still playing manager?" Chloe's voice echoed from the doorway. She walked in, designer heels clicking on marble. "God, it's worse than I expected. Linda was right. You're completely out of your depth. Get out." "Or what?" She ran a finger along a table, checking for dust. "You'll tell Daddy. Show him more papers. Face it, Mabel, you're nothing. Just a sad little girl playing dress-up in someone else's life." My vision blurred. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, crumbling under the weight of their combined assault. "The party starts in 4 hours, Chloe continued. "Try not to embarrass yourself too much when you're serving drinks." She left me there, surrounded by the wreckage of my plans. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, probably hearing about the mounting problems. I couldn't face him. Couldn't admit that I'd let Linda outmaneuver me, let Chloe turn my moment of triumph into another humiliation. Rachel's contact photo lit up my screen. I almost declined the call, but her voice was exactly what I needed. "They're trying to shut down the venue," I said before she could speak. "Linda's destroying everything, and I can't—" "Stop." Rachel's tone cut through my panic. "Remember what you told me when you first moved out, about being done playing their game? This is different. No, it's not. They're still trying to make you play by their rules, so change the game." I looked around the ballroom, seeing it through new eyes. Every crisis they'd created, every obstacle they'd thrown up. They all assumed I'd try to fix things their way, try to salvage their perfect party. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Rachel," I said slowly, "I need you to make some calls." "What are we doing?" I smiled, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. "We're going to give them exactly the party they deserve. 4 hours, just enough time to show them what happens when you push the quiet one too far. Just enough time for revenge. The Grand Rose's ballroom filled with society's finest, all here to witness Chloe's triumphant return. Crystal glasses clinked, the replacement string quartet played, and everyone pretended not to notice the tension crackling through the air. I stood at the manager's podium, watching Linda's face as she realized none of her sabotage had worked. Every crisis handled, every gap filled, every detail perfect. Just not the way she'd expected. "What is this?" Chloe hissed, grabbing my arm. "Where are the imported flowers? The champagne fountain?" "Management decision." I smiled, gesturing to the simple elegance that had replaced her gaudy choices. "Budget constraints." "Budget? Do you know who I am?" "Miss Carter?" One of my staff approached. "Your grandmother has arrived." Grandmother Evelyn entered like a queen, commanding attention without effort. But it was what she carried that made Linda go pale, Mom's sapphire necklace glinting in the chandelier light. "Found this at a certain jeweler's shop," Grandmother announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Imagine my surprise when Marcus Rothschild told me who sold it to him. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Linda stepped forward, face tight. "Evelyn, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time." I moved to the center of the room, taking the microphone. "Welcome, everyone, to the Grand Rose. I'm Mabel Carter, venue manager and co-owner." The silence was absolute. In the corner, Dad straightened, really looking at me for the first time all evening. Some of you know me as the quiet bookstore girl, others as the family disappointment. My voice carried clearly, years of practice hiding any tremor. "Tonight, I'm here to tell you a story about legacy." "Mabel," Linda warned, but I continued. "A story about a necklace passed down through generations, sold without consent. About a college fund drained for dance lessons and sports cars. About a family that thought silence meant weakness." Chloe lunged for the microphone, but Rachel, perfectly positioned, stepped between us. "Careful," she murmured. Security's watching. While you were all busy underestimating me, I continued, I was building something. Learning. Growing. Tonight isn't just Chloe's homecoming party, it's my revelation party. I nodded to the staff, who unveiled the screens around the room. Security footage played silently. Linda threatening me at the bookstore, Chloe's taunting video messages, bank statements showing the systematic theft of my inheritance. You see, I turned to Linda, whose composure was cracking. I learned from the best. Every scheme, every manipulation, every quiet power play. You taught me well, stepmother. Thomas, Linda appealed to my father, she's lying. No. Dad's voice was heavy with realization. She's not. Grandmother stepped forward, the sapphire necklace catching the light. The board of directors has been informed of your financial irregularities, Linda. They're very interested in discussing them. You can't prove... Actually, I cut in, I can prove everything. Every transaction, every forged signature, every stolen moment of my mother's legacy. The question is, what happens next? The room held its breath. Chloe, for once, was speechless. Linda's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she knew it. Security will escort you out, I said quietly. The police have questions about certain financial discrepancies. And Dad? I met his eyes. I think it's time for some family counseling. You vindictive little... Linda started forward, but stopped short as grandmother placed the necklace around my neck. My granddaughter, she announced to the room, has not only earned back her inheritance but multiplied it. The family estate will reflect that reality. The sapphire felt cool against my skin, its weight familiar and right. Linda and Chloe were escorted out, their protests fading into the night. Guests murmured and whispered, the evening's entertainment far exceeding their expectations. Dad approached slowly, looking lost. Mabel, Not tonight. I touched the necklace, feeling its truth. We'll talk, but not tonight. Tonight is about reclaiming what was taken, all of it. The party continued around us, but something had shifted. The quiet bookstore girl was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success. And as I stood there, surrounded by the life I'd built from their betrayal, I realized revenge wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wanted something better. I wanted forward. The Grand Rose emptied slowly, whispers and speculation trailing behind each departing guest. I stood at my manager's podium, fingers tracing the edge of Mom's necklace, when I noticed something odd about the clasp. A tiny seam, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, the kind of detail only someone intimately familiar with the piece would recognize. My hands shook as I worked the hidden mechanism. The sapphire setting clicked open, revealing a folded slip of paper, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved. I always wondered if you'd find it. Grandmother appeared beside me, her eyes bright. Your mother showed me the secret compartment the day before she died. Said it was for when you were ready. The paper felt fragile between my fingers as I unfolded it. Mom's handwriting, still as elegant as I remembered. My dearest Mabel, if you're reading this, you've discovered that strength isn't always about being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's about waiting, watching, building something of your own. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to teach you this myself, but knowing you found this means you've already learned it on your own. Remember, legacy isn't just what we inherit, it's what we choose to build from the pieces we're given. All my love, Mom. The words blurred as tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. She would have been proud, Grandmother said quietly. Not of the revenge, though I must admit that was rather spectacular, but of who you've become despite everything they tried to make you. Dad cleared his throat behind us. He stood awkwardly in the emptying ballroom, looking smaller without Linda's shadow. The police want statements tomorrow, about the financial records. I nodded, tucking Mom's letter safely away. I'll be there. Mabel, He stopped, started again. I failed you, over and over. Yes, I said simply. You did. Rachel appeared with my coat, ready to run interference, but I waved her off. This needed to happen. I don't expect forgiveness, Dad continued, but I'd like to try something. Whatever you're willing to allow. I thought about Mum's words, about legacies and choices and building from broken pieces. Coffee, I said finally. Once a month, neutral ground. We'll see where it goes. He nodded, relief and regret warring on his face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of the necklace, the letter, everything they represented. Trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. I understand. As he left, Grandmother squeezed my hand. You're being kinder than they deserve. No. I looked around the ballroom, my domain now, earned through every sleepless night and hidden tea. I'm being exactly who I choose to be. That's the difference. The staff was cleaning up, resetting the room for tomorrow's events. Life moving forward, just as it should. The necklace suits you, Rachel said, joining us. Though I have to ask, was it worth it? All of this? I touched the sapphire, feeling the hidden compartment with its precious cargo. Thought about the girl I'd been, invisible and voiceless, and the woman I'd become. It was never about the necklace, I said, or even about revenge, really. It was about proving something. To them. To myself. Grandmother smiled, knowing and proud. And what did you prove? I looked out over my domain, the grand ballroom where I'd finally found my voice, the staff who respected me not for my name but for my work, the future stretching out before me, full of possibilities I'd built for myself. That legacy isn't what they take from you, I said, Mom's words echoing in my heart. It's what you choose to build from the pieces they leave behind. The last guests were leaving, the night winding down. Tomorrow would bring police statements and newspaper headlines, lawyers and consequences. But tonight, in this moment, I felt nothing but peace. I'd gotten everything I wanted, but not in the way I'd expected. Revenge had transformed into something better, into growth, into strength, into a future entirely my own. Mum would have understood. She'd known all along. The sapphire caught the light one last time as I turned off the chandeliers, its blue depths holding not just the past now, but the promise of everything still to come.
The text from Mom lit up my phone screen. Family meeting. Our house. 7 p.m. Urgent. My stomach did a familiar, unpleasant flip. Urgent in my family usually meant one of two things. Either they needed me to play tech support for the umpteenth time, or more likely, my brother Carson had messed up again, and they needed a solution, preferably one that involved me. My name is Esme, by the way, and I'd spent most of my adult life trying to build something for myself, away from the constant low-humming chaos of my family. I walked into their living room at 7 on the dot. The air was thick enough to spread on toast. Mom, Adeline, sat ramrod straight on the sofa, her lips a thin, disapproving line. Dad, George, was slumped in his armchair, looking like he'd aged a decade since I last saw him. And there, perched on the edge of the ottoman like a concerned cherub, was Carson. He even managed to squeeze out a worried frown, though his eyes held that familiar flicker of something I couldn't quite name, but always distrusted. Esme, thank you for coming, Mom began, her voice tight. We have some difficult news. I waited. This was their stage. I was just the audience, or occasionally the prop. We're ruined, Esme, Dad mumbled, staring at his hands. Financially, completely. I blinked. Ruined? They lived comfortably. Dad had a decent pension. Mom had her part-time job at the library she lorded over. What happened? Mom shot a look at Carson, a strange, almost protective glance, before turning back to me. It's complicated, dear. Bad investments, unexpected expenses. It's all just piled up. And, she continued, her voice gaining a sharper edge, we've been looking at all our assets, everything we have, and it's just not enough to cover this hole. I saw Carson nod slowly, his expression a perfect mask of sympathy. He was wearing a new smartwatch, I noticed, very sleek, very expensive looking for someone whose parents were supposedly ruined. Over the past 6 months, while their vague complaints about money had started to surface, Carson had mysteriously acquired a new phone, designer trainers, and was always talking about fancy restaurants he'd been to. "So," Mom said, taking a deep breath, "we need your help." Here it comes, I thought, the ask. "Your little house, Esme," she said, her gaze flicking towards me with an almost accusatory glint. "You bought it when prices were lower. It's gained some equity." My heart began to thump a slow, heavy beat. My house. The small 2-bedroom place I'd poured every spare cent and countless hours of sweat into. My sanctuary, my independence. "We need you to sell it," she stated flatly, "to cover the debts." The room fell silent. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that had underscored every significant and usually unpleasant family announcement of my life. "Sell my house?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "It's the only way, Esme," Carson chimed in, his voice oozing fake concern. "We're family. We have to pull together." He even reached out and patted my arm. I resisted the urge to flinch. Mom seized on his cue. "Exactly, Carson. Thank you for being so understanding. Esme, darling, we know it's a lot to ask, but what else can we do? We'll be out on the street." The melodrama was Oscar-worthy, but then she delivered the line that made my blood boil. "And honestly, Esme," she said, a sigh escaping her lips, "that little online shop of yours, it was always a bit of a gamble, wasn't it? Perhaps if you'd had a more stable career, you could help us in other ways. But this is where we are." My shop, my thriving online craft business that I'd built from scratch, the one that paid my mortgage, my bills, and allowed me to save a little, the one they'd always dismissed as a cute hobby. Now it was somehow to blame for their financial ruin. The audacity was breathtaking. I looked at their faces, Mom's, pinched with a mixture of desperation and self-righteousness, Dad's, crumpled and defeated, avoiding my gaze, and Carson's, that carefully constructed mask of solemn support, but with that tiny, almost imperceptible smirk playing around his lips. He thought he had me. They all did. The dutiful daughter, the eternal scapegoat, ready to sacrifice her hard-won stability for their, what? Mismanagement? Or something else? That new smartwatch gleamed under the lamplight. A cold, clear thought cut through the anger and the hurt. This wasn't just about money. This was about a pattern, a lifetime of it. I took a slow breath, meeting Mom's gaze, then Dad's, then letting my eyes rest on Carson for a fraction too long. "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Okay, I'll sell the house." I even managed a small, sad smile. For the family. Relief washed over Mom's face so intensely it was almost comical. Dad let out a shaky sigh. Carson's smirk finally broke free, morphing into a satisfied little smile before he quickly schooled his features back into somber concern. They bought it, every last word. But as I watched them, a different kind of resolve solidified within me, hard and sharp as glass. If they thought I was just going to roll over and let them bulldoze my life to cover up their mess, or more accurately, what I was beginning to suspect was his mess, they were in for a very big surprise. This family meeting wasn't over. It had only just begun. The next morning, Mom called, her voice at least 2 shades lighter. "Esme, darling, I've already spoken to Brenda from down the street. You know her cousin is a real estate agent? She says the market is very good right now. We could get this sorted quickly." "That's great, Mom," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice while staring at my laptop screen, a half-written email to a local appraiser open. "Just send me the agent's details." "Oh, wonderful! You see, George, I told you Esme would come through for us," I heard her say to Dad in the background, followed by his indistinct murmur. Carson, naturally, had to add his 2 cents. He sauntered over to my place a couple of days later, ostensibly to see if I needed help packing. He wandered through my living room, picking up my carefully curated knickknacks, a smug little smile playing on his lips. "You know, sis," he said, examining a small ceramic bird I'd made, "it's probably for the best. This place is a bit small, isn't it? Once you've helped Mom and Dad out, you can find a nice little apartment. Less upkeep." "Right," I said, gritting my teeth. "Less upkeep." My little house, my pride and joy, dismissed as a temporary inconvenience. "And you're doing the right thing," he added, patting my shoulder with that infuriatingly condescending air of his. "Family first, always." "Always," I echoed, already picturing the digital breadcrumbs I was determined to follow. As soon as he left, I got to work. My agreement to sell was a smokescreen, a way to buy myself time. I remembered Carson, a few months back, puffing his chest out after a phone call, muttering something about a sweet deal he'd landed that was gonna change things. At the time, I dismissed it as typical Carson bluster. Now, it felt significant. My first stop was their shared online banking. Years ago, I'd helped Mom and Dad set it up, and my login details, embarrassingly, still worked. They weren't exactly tech-savvy, and I doubted they'd ever bothered to change the password I'd set for them, Fluffy123, after their dearly departed cat. Sure enough, I was in. I started scrolling back through months of statements, my heart thumping. I was looking for anything around the time Carson started his spending spree, and my parents began their vague moaning about tightening belts. It didn't take long. There were several large transfers, all marked with vague descriptions like loan repayment or investment withdrawal. But they weren't withdrawals from an investment. They were disbursements into their main checking account. And then, almost immediately, similar large sums would go out, labeled simply transfer, or with a generic biller name I didn't recognize. The amounts were significant, far more than their usual expenses. And the timing? It lined up almost perfectly with Carson's new phone, his designer wardrobe updates, and those fancy dinners he'd been bragging about. "What are you up to, Carson?" I murmured to the screen. I spent hours cross-referencing dates, amounts, trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. My online shop orders chimed in the background, a steady rhythm of legitimacy against the murky transactions I was uncovering. Mom called again a few days later. "The agent is coming over to your place tomorrow at 10 to do an initial valuation, Esme. Make sure it's tidy, dear." "Will do, Mom," I said, my mind racing. I needed something more concrete. That evening, I was at their house, ostensibly to pick up some old photo albums Mom wanted me to store safely, since they'd soon be downsizing. The real reason was the family computer in the study. Carson was notoriously lazy about logging out of his accounts. While Mom was fussing in the kitchen and Dad was watching TV, I slipped into the study. My fingers flew over the keyboard. Bingo. He'd left his email logged in. My breath hitched. I scanned his inbox, my eyes darting over subject lines. Most of it was junk, gaming notifications, social media updates, and then I saw it. An email confirmation from Prestige Auto Detailing. The date was 3 months ago, right when the large sum started moving out of my parents' account. The subject line read, "Your full detail and ceramic coating appointment for Mercedes C-Class." A Mercedes? Carson? He drove a beat-up 10-year-old hatchback that was perpetually low on gas. I clicked open the email. It confirmed an appointment, the make and model of the car, and listed the services performed, the works, costing a small fortune. My eyes scanned down to the location of the detailing shop. It was in the city's most affluent district, right next to a string of high-end car dealerships. Dealerships Carson couldn't afford to even window shop at, let alone buy from. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about him sponging off Mom and Dad for new clothes. This was something much, much bigger. And he was trying to make me pay for it with my home. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. My hand tightened into a fist. He wasn't just going to get away with this, not anymore. The Prestige Auto Detailing email was a blazing arrow pointing directly at Carson's deception. The next morning, I told the real estate agent Mom had sent that I needed a few more days to declutter before she officially listed the house. She was surprisingly understanding, probably used to sellers dragging their feet. That bought me a little more breathing room. I drove out to the address from the email. The detailing shop was exactly where it said it would be, nestled between a gleaming Porsche dealership and a showroom filled with sleek, expensive Audis. I parked across the street, just watching for a while. It was a long shot, but I had to try. I eventually went into the Audi dealership, pretending to browse. Just looking for some inspiration, I told a young, eager salesman who approached me. My brother's been talking about upgrading his car, mentioned he was around this area recently, drives an older hatchback, but he's dreaming big. The salesman, probably smelling a potential commission, however distant, became chatty. Oh, we get a lot of dreamers, and sometimes they become buyers. What's his name? Maybe he popped in. Carson, I said. Carson W. Just Carson. I mentally kicked myself for almost saying our surname. He tapped on his tablet. Don't see a Carson in our recent inquiries, but people browse all the time. He then gestured vaguely. The Mercedes dealership next door does a lot of business, too. Popular choice. Mercedes. The email had specified a Mercedes C-Class. I thanked him and left, feeling a little deflated, but also more certain. He wouldn't have used his real name if he was just browsing, but the car detail was specific. Back home, I took a deep breath and dipped into my shop's emergency savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to hire one of those online private investigator services that specialized in vehicle registration searches. I typed in Carson's full name and our state, paid the modest fee, and crossed my fingers. The site said it could take 24 to 48 hours. The waiting was agony. That night was the pre-scheduled family dinner at my parents' house, a weekly ritual I usually tried to find excuses to miss. Tonight, I knew I had to go, to keep up appearances. So, Esme, Mom began as she served overcooked roast chicken, Brenda's cousin said your house should sell quickly. She's very optimistic. That's good, I said, pushing a dry piece of chicken around my plate. Carson naturally couldn't resist a jab. He'd been unusually quiet, mostly smirking into his plate. Yeah, it's great you're finally contributing something significant, sis. Shame that little online hobby of yours couldn't even cover a decent dinner like this, eh? He gestured expansively at the mediocre meal. My fork clattered against the plate. I bit back the retort that my little hobby paid my mortgage, something he, living rent-free with our parents, clearly couldn't comprehend. Now, Carson, be nice, Mom chided gently, but there was no real heat in it. Your sister is doing her best, and you've been such a rock for us through all this, dear, she added, beaming at him. So supportive. I nearly choked on my water. Supportive? He was the bloody iceberg that was sinking their financial Titanic. Dad just grunted, engrossed in dissecting his chicken wing. The hypocrisy was suffocating. I excused myself early, pleading a headache. The drive home was filled with a simmering rage. How could they be so blind? Or were they willfully ignorant? The next afternoon, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject, Vehicle Registration Search Results. My heart leaped. I clicked it open. There it was. Carson Williams, registered owner of a silver Mercedes-Benz C300, purchased 3 months ago. The report even included a grainy, time-stamped photo taken from a public parking garage security camera feed the PI service had somehow accessed. It was undeniably Carson, looking pleased as punch, standing next to a gleaming silver sedan. A car that cost more than my parents' combined annual income. A car that screamed fraud. I stared at the photo, at his smug face. The pieces weren't just falling into place. They were slamming together with the force of a battering ram. He hadn't just siphoned off a bit of cash for gadgets. He'd bought a luxury car, and he was going to let me lose my home to cover his tracks. The anger was a cold, hard knot in my stomach now. This wasn't just about getting my house back. This was about justice. This was about making him and them face the truth. The real estate agent could wait. I had more important appointments to make. The proof of Carson's Mercedes lit a fire under me, but it also meant I had to tread even more carefully. My parents, however, were ramping up the pressure cooker. "Esme," the agent called again. Mom's voice crackled over the phone the next morning. "She said you haven't signed the listing agreement yet. Is everything all right, dear? We really need to get this moving." "Just finalizing a few things, Mom," I said, trying to sound busy and responsible. "You know, paperwork." "Well, don't finalize for too long," she replied, her tone sharpening. "Time is of the essence." Later that day, she helpfully dropped by my house, unannounced. She had a stack of brochures in her hand. "I was just passing by the community center," she chirped, handing them to me, "and they had these listings for some lovely little apartments, much more manageable for a single girl like you once all this unpleasantness is over." I flipped through them. They were all tiny, depressing one-bedroom flats in rundown buildings on the other side of town. My stomach churned. "Thanks, Mom. I'll look at them." "Good girl." She patted my cheek, a gesture that felt more like a brand than affection. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed more than just a picture of Carson with a fancy car. I needed to link it directly to the money disappearing from my parents' accounts. The online bank statements I'd found showed large loan disbursements into their account, which were then quickly transferred out. I needed to know where those loans came from. Carson, meanwhile, was starting to act twitchy. He'd always been arrogant, but now there was an undercurrent of something else. Suspicion, maybe? He'd casually drop by my house more often, asking pointed questions. "Spending a lot of time on that computer, sis," he commented one afternoon, peering over my shoulder. I was actually researching local credit unions and loan companies, trying to see if any of their logos or names matched the vague biller descriptions on the bank statements. I quickly minimized the window. "Just shop stuff," I said. "End-of-month accounts." Right, your little empire." He smirked. "You're not having second thoughts about helping Mom and Dad, are you? Because you know they're really counting on you." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course not, Carson," I said, forcing a smile. "Just stressed with everything. Selling a house isn't exactly a walk in the park." He seemed to accept that, but his gaze lingered on my screen for a moment too long before he sauntered off to raid my fridge. He was definitely rattled about something. Was it just the general family stress, or did he suspect I was on to him? The pressure was immense. I was juggling my actual business, the charade of selling my house, and this secret, all-consuming investigation. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. One evening, fueled by coffee and sheer determination, I was in my home office, printing out the crucial bank statements I'd downloaded from my parents' account, the ones showing the loan deposits and the subsequent large withdrawals. I needed hard copies, something tangible. The printer whirred, spitting out page after page. Suddenly the door creaked open. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Carson. "Hey, Esme, Mom sent me over to get that casserole dish she lent you," he said, his eyes flicking around the room before landing on the printer. I moved fast, almost instinctively. I grabbed a thick stack of my shop's recent invoices and order forms from my desk and slapped them down on top of the freshly printed bank statements just as the last page was emerging. "Oh, hey," I said, trying to sound casual, my pulse hammering against my ribs. "Just doing my taxes. You know how it is." He ambled closer, peering at the top sheet, which was thankfully a legitimate invoice for a large order of handmade soaps. "Taxes, huh? Fun stuff." His gaze drifted to the edge of the papers beneath the invoices. A sliver of a bank logo, A line of figures was just barely visible. My breath caught. He frowned, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Looks like a lot of paperwork for your little hobby." "It's growing," I said, my voice a little too bright. "Keeps me busy." I quickly scooped up the entire pile, bank statements and invoices jumbled together, and shoved them into a drawer. Casserole dishes in the kitchen, top cupboard. He hesitated for a second, his eyes still on the drawer, then shrugged. "Right, thanks." He turned and left. I leaned against the desk, my legs feeling like jelly. That was too close. Way too close. Had he seen enough to be truly alarmed, or had my quick thinking bought me more time? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. I needed to find the final piece of the puzzle, and I needed to do it fast before he, or my parents, forced my hand. The next move had to be mine. Carson didn't mention the printer incident again, but there was a new wariness in his eyes whenever he looked at me. He started asking more questions about the house sale, about the specific bank we'd be using for the equity transfer. I knew I was running out of time. I became a ghost, moving through my days with a singular focus. The photos of Carson with the Mercedes were good, but I needed something more direct. I started paying closer attention to his infrequent social media posts. He wasn't stupid enough to post pictures of the car, but he did check in at a trendy new cafe near the financial district fairly regularly. One afternoon, armed with my phone, I coincidentally happened to be at that same cafe. I ordered a coffee, found a discreet table, and waited. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, Carson strolled in, looking pleased with himself. He met someone, a flashy guy I didn't recognize, and they sat near the window. As they were leaving, I managed to get a couple of quick, clear photos of Carson walking towards the street, his Mercedes parked brazenly at a meter just a few feet away. The angle even caught part of the license plate. Click. Gotcha. The real breakthrough, though, came from a desperate, late-night gamble. Mom had, in one of her more anxious ramblings about their debt, mentioned the names of a couple of loan companies they'd supposedly dealt with in the past for a small home improvement loan years ago. Friendly Finance and Secure Lend, she'd called them. On a hunch, I visited their websites. Most legitimate financial institutions have online portals for customers. I tried Friendly Finance first. I knew Dad's email, his date of birth, the usual stuff. The security questions were the hurdle. What was the name of your first pet? I remembered them talking about a scruffy terrier named Patch from before I was born. I typed it in. What is your mother's maiden name? Easy. What was the model of your first car? That one stumped me for a bit. Then I recalled Dad grumbling about an old Ford Cortina he'd loved. My breath hitched as the screen changed. Logan successful. I was in. My hands were shaking. I navigated to the loan documents section, and there they were, not old home improvement loans. These were recent, very recent, 3 of them, all taken out in the last 4 months, each for a substantial 5-figure sum. The total was astronomical, easily enough to buy a luxury car and then some, and all in my parents' names, George and Adeline. My blood ran cold as I opened the scanned PDF of the first loan agreement. I scrolled down to the signature line. George's name was there, but it wasn't quite right. Dad's signature was usually a confident, slightly flamboyant scrawl. This was shaky, hesitant, the loops a little too round, the slant slightly off. It was a decent attempt, passable if you weren't looking closely, but I knew my father's signature. I'd seen it on countless school permission slips, birthday checks, official documents. This wasn't it. My mind raced. Carson. It had to be. He lived with them. He'd have access to their mail, their personal information. I pulled out an old birthday card from my desk, one Carson had given me years ago. His handwriting was lazy, a bit sloppy, but certain characteristics jumped out. The way he formed his G, the slightly exaggerated curve of his S. I held the card next to the screen, comparing his writing to the forged signature on the loan document. It was a match. Not a perfect CSI-level match, but close enough for my gut to scream, "Guilty!" I felt sick. He hadn't just taken their money. He'd actively forged their signatures, saddling them with crippling debt they clearly knew nothing about the true extent of, all for a stupid car and a lifestyle he couldn't afford. And they, in their blind favoritism, were ready to throw me to the wolves to fix a problem he created. I immediately called Sarah, my best friend. I'd kept her vaguely in the loop, but now I spilled everything: the car, the bank statements, the forged signatures. "Oh my God, Esme," she breathed, horrified. That's insane. Your own brother?" "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "I feel like I'm going to be sick." "What are you going to do?" she asked. I took a deep breath, the image of the forged signature burning in my mind. "I'm going to expose him." Sarah was silent for a moment. "Are you sure? This will blow up your whole family." "They were ready to blow up my life," I said, a cold, hard resolve settling in. "It's time they faced the consequences of his actions and their own blindness." I spent the rest of the night compiling my evidence: printouts of the loan documents with the forged signatures highlighted, the photos of Carson with the Mercedes, copies of the bank statements showing the money flowing in and out, even a printout of that damning car detailing email. I placed everything into a neat, ominous folder. The bank meeting, the one where I was supposed to sign away my house to help the family, was scheduled for the next morning. Mom had called earlier, her voice practically giddy with relief. "Tomorrow, Esme, we can finally put this all behind us." I looked at the folder. Tomorrow, indeed. But it wouldn't be me putting anything behind me. It would be them, finally facing what they'd allowed to happen, what they'd tried to make me pay for. The anger was still there, but now it was accompanied by a strange, steely calm. I knew exactly what I had to do. Sleep was a forgotten concept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the folder of evidence a heavy weight on my nightstand. Each tick of my alarm clock sounded like a countdown. I replayed the upcoming confrontation in my mind, over and over, trying out different opening lines, imagining their faces. Would Mom scream? Would Dad finally show some backbone? Would Carson even attempt to lie his way out of it when faced with cold, hard proof? My phone buzzed around 11. It was Mom. "Esme, darling, are you all set for tomorrow?" Her voice was unnervingly cheerful, laced with an almost manic relief. "George and I were just saying, it'll be such a weight off our minds. We can finally breathe again. Thanks to you, sweetheart." "All set, Mom," I managed, my own voice a hollow echo of her forced brightness. "See you at the bank." "Wonderful. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Click. I squeezed my eyes shut. "Thanks to me." The irony was a bitter pill. They were thanking me for unknowingly funding their son's joyride while preparing to sacrifice my future. The thought fueled the cold fire in my belly. A few minutes later, another buzz, a text message, from Carson. "Looking forward to tomorrow. You're doing a good thing, sis. Really appreciate it." Followed by a smug-looking smiley face emoji. I threw my phone onto the duvet, a surge of pure, unadulterated rage washing over me. Appreciate it? He appreciated that I was about to lose my home, my security, the one thing I'd built for myself, all so he could continue his charade? The audacity was breathtaking, but the rage quickly cooled, replaced by that strange, icy calm that had become my companion. Let him look forward to it. Let them all. I got out of bed and walked over to my desk, picking up the folder. I opened it, methodically checking each document one last time. The loan applications with those shaky, forged signatures. The printouts of Dad's real signature from old letters, a stark contrast. The glossy photos of Carson beaming beside his silver Mercedes. The bank statements, a clear trail of money flowing in from phantom loans and out to fund his lifestyle. The email from Prestige Auto Detailing. It was all there. A neat, undeniable narrative of deceit and betrayal. I thought back over the years. The countless times Carson's minor scrapes had been smoothed over by Mom and Dad. The way my achievements were met with polite but distant acknowledgement, while Carson's smallest, most mundane accomplishments were lauded as genius. The constant, subtle erosion of my worth in their eyes, always second best, always the responsible one expected to pick up the pieces. This wasn't just about a house or money anymore. This was about every dismissive comment, every overlooked success, every time I'd been made to feel like an afterthought in my own family. This was about reclaiming something far more valuable than property, my dignity, my truth. I finally drifted into a restless sleep for a few hours, the images of their faces, shocked, horrified, betrayed, dancing behind my eyelids. The morning dawned gray and overcast, matching my mood. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple, professional outfit. I wanted to look calm, composed, in control. I made coffee but couldn't drink it. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and anticipation. As I picked up the folder, my hand was surprisingly steady. This was it. No turning back. The thought, instead of terrifying me, brought a strange sense of peace. I was no longer a pawn in their game. Today, I was setting the board. I drove to the bank, the folder resting on the passenger seat beside me like a silent, powerful ally. I pulled into the parking lot, and there they were, already walking towards the entrance, Mom, Dad, and Carson. Mom was chattering animatedly to the bank manager, a portly man with a kind face who I vaguely recognized from a previous visit when I'd opened my business account. His name tag read, Marco Powell. Dad trailed slightly behind, looking uncomfortable but relieved. Carson walked with a swagger, his hands in his pockets, a self-satisfied smirk firmly in place. He saw me get out of my car and actually had the nerve to give me a condescending wink, like we were conspirators in my own financial ruin. I clutched the folder tighter. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat against the impending storm. I took a deep breath and walked towards them, towards the sterile quiet of the bank, towards the moment that would change everything. The air crackled with unspoken words, with years of resentment, with the imminent explosion of a carefully constructed lie. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a reckoning. Marco Powell, the bank manager, ushered us into a small, glass-walled conference room. "Please have a seat. Coffee? Water?" Mom simpered. Water would be lovely, thank you, Marco." Carson leaned back in his chair, looking for all the world like he owned the place. Dad just looked down at the polished table. I sat opposite them, placing my folder squarely in front of me. Marco began, his tone professional and sympathetic. "So, Adeline, George, as we discussed, your current financial situation is quite precarious. Several outstanding personal loans, maxed credit facilities. It's a significant debt load." He glanced at me. "And Esme, you've generously agreed to leverage the equity in your property to help consolidate these debts and alleviate the immediate pressure. We have the preliminary paperwork here." He started to slide a sheaf of papers across the table towards me. This was it. My cue. "Actually, Marco," I said, my voice surprisingly calm and clear in the quiet room, "before we proceed with selling my house, I believe we need to discuss these debts first, specifically how they came to be." All three of them looked at me, Mom with a flicker of annoyance, Carson with a raised eyebrow of feigned curiosity, Dad with a sort of dazed incomprehension. Marco paused, his hand hovering over the papers. I opened my folder. "These loans," I continued, pulling out the first forged loan application from Friendly Finance and placing it in the center of the table. "This one, for instance, taken out 4 months ago, in your names, Mom, Dad." Mom frowned. "Well, yes, dear, we had to cover some things." "Things like a brand new Mercedes C-Class, perhaps?" I asked, my gaze flicking to Carson. His confident smirk faltered, just a little. I then laid down one of the glossy photos of him beaming beside the silver car. A small gasp escaped Mom. Dad's head jerked up. Carson's face went rigid. "Esme, what is the meaning of this?" Mom demanded, her voice rising. "The meaning, Mom," I said, my voice hardening, "is that this signature here, George's signature, it's a forgery." I placed an old signed birthday card from Dad next to the loan document. "Compare them. They're close, but not close enough." The color drained from Dad's face. He stared at the two signatures, then at Carson, his mouth falling slightly open. "And this loan," I continued, laying down another application, this one from Secure Lend, also taken out in your names, also with a forged signature, and another one after that. I spread the documents out, totaling over $70,000. Funny how that's roughly the price of a new Mercedes, isn't it, Carson? Carson's face was now a mask of dawning horror. He looked like a cornered animal. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, his eyes darting between me, the papers, and our parents. "Oh, I think you do," I said, my voice like ice. I added the printouts of the bank statements, showing the large deposits from these loan companies, followed by equally large withdrawals. The money came into their account, and then, poof, it was gone. Around the same time, you started sporting new designer clothes, a fancy smartwatch, and, of course, this rather expensive car that required prestige auto detailing. I tossed the email confirmation onto the growing pile of evidence. Marco Powell was watching this unfold with wide, shocked eyes, but he remained silent, a stunned observer to our family's implosion. Mom was staring at Carson, her face a mixture of disbelief and dawning, terrible understanding. "Carson," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what is she saying?" "She's lying," Carson finally blurted out, his voice cracking. "She's making it all up. She doesn't want to sell her precious house, so she's trying to blame me. Am I, Carson?" I met his panicked gaze. "Then explain the car. Explain these signatures. Explain where $70,000 went, because Mom and Dad certainly don't seem to know." Dad finally spoke, his voice raspy, broken. "Carson, son, did you do this?" He looked utterly devastated, like his world had just crumbled around him. Carson stared at him, his bravado completely gone, replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to form a coherent denial. The evidence was too damning, too complete. I looked from Carson's terrified face to my mother's aghast expression, to my father's broken one. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Then I turned to my parents. "The question isn't about my house anymore," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "It's about what you're going to do about your son. It's about the fact that he defrauded you, and that you were so quick to believe his lies, so quick to blame my struggling shop, so willing to ruin me to protect him, even from yourselves." The silence stretched, thick with unspoken accusations and shattered illusions. Carson looked like he was about to throw up. Mom just stared, tears welling in her eyes. Dad looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. The smugness, the entitlement, the carefully constructed family narrative, it had all come crashing down in a sterile bank office. The dam finally broke. Carson crumpled, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I didn't mean for it to get so out of control," he wailed, the words muffled. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed a little boost." Mom let out a strangled cry, a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "Carson, how could you, after everything we've done for you?" She rounded on him, her earlier shock morphing into a raw, hysterical fury. "Your own parents, and you let us blame Esme? You stood there and let us demand she sell her home?" Dad just sat there, utterly silent, his face gray. He looked like a statue, frozen in a moment of unbearable pain. The fight seemed to have drained out of him completely, leaving behind a hollow shell. Marco Powell cleared his throat, his professional composure strained. "Perhaps," he suggested delicately, his eyes avoiding direct contact with any of us, This is a family matter that needs to be resolved privately. We can reschedule any legitimate financial discussions for a later date, once things are clearer." He gathered the untouched bank paperwork with a quiet efficiency. I stood up, collecting my folder. My job here was done. "I think that's a good idea, Marco. Thank you for your time." I didn't look at my family. I couldn't. I just turned and walked out of the conference room, out of the bank, and into the cool, indifferent air outside. The sounds of Mom's escalating tirade and Carson's pathetic whimpers faded behind me. I drove home, the silence in my car a stark contrast to the storm I'd just unleashed. I didn't feel triumphant, not exactly. There was a grim satisfaction, yes, but also a profound sadness. The family I'd known, flawed as it was, had been irrevocably shattered. The fallout was swift, though I only heard about it in piecemeal snippets. Sarah called later that day, having received a frantic, tearful call from my mother. Apparently, one of the loan companies, alerted by Marco Powell about potential fraud after our dramatic exit, had already initiated an investigation. Carson, faced with actual legal repercussions, had confessed to everything, not just to our parents, but to the authorities. He had to sell the Mercedes, of course. It barely covered a fraction of the debt he'd racked up. I heard he was facing charges, though I made it clear I wouldn't be pressing any myself. The loan companies were more than capable of handling that. My parents, forced to confront the full extent of their son's betrayal and their own monumental denial, were devastated. They had to sell their own house, the one filled with a lifetime of memories, to cover the remaining debts. They moved into a small, rented apartment, ironically, one very similar to the depressing brochures Mom had so eagerly pressed on me. They tried to reach out. Mom called, her voice thick with tears and guilt-ridden apologies. "Esme, I am so sorry. We were blind. We were fools. Can you ever forgive us?" Dad sent a short, stilted email, full of remorse and shame. Even Carson, through a mutual acquaintance, tried to send a message, something about being young and stupid and hoping I could understand. I didn't respond directly to any of them. Not yet. The wounds were too raw, the betrayal too deep. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I kept my house, my sanctuary. My online shop, ironically, started to do even better. Orders poured in, as if the universe itself was rewarding my stand. It became a symbol of my independence, my resilience. A few weeks after the bank meeting, I was sitting on my small porch, sipping tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Just checking in," she said. "How are you, really?" I took a deep breath. "I'm okay," I said, and for the first time, it felt true. "It's quiet. Too quiet sometimes. But it's a good quiet. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine was served in a sterile bank office, and yes, there was a certain satisfaction in watching the truth unravel. But the silence in my family albums speaks volumes now. The empty chairs at future holidays, the unspoken words hanging in the air. I chose truth, and in doing so, I chose myself. Some debts, I realized, can never truly be repaid, not in money anyway. But some chains, the ones that bind you to toxic patterns and unearned guilt, can, and absolutely must, be broken. I looked out at the fading light, a sense of hard-won peace settling over me. My future was my own, finally, and that was a victory worth more than any house,